on promoting alternative and innovative approaches to the global fashion system with the ambition of demonstrating that the fashion sector in Kenya is a professional choice for young people and a valuable contributor to the creative economy. Now, 12 Kenyan employment agencies in Qatar have been blacklisted over the poor treatment of staff by the Gulf state. These followed talks between Central Organization of Trade Union Secretary General Franz Atoli and Minister of Labour in Qatar Ali bin Samir Al-Mari, where they agreed to do away with employment agencies that have been used to sneak in Kenyans. The closure decision included the following recruitment officers: Starch Anand, Sunrise Dubai, Frame, Al-Adam, Abshir, Al-Metha, Kresala, Altun and Al-Dabat. In accordance with the decision, the closed offices may not engage in the activity of recruiting labor or concluding contracts with employers. In the meeting, they also agreed that Kenya should establish government-to-government relations with Qatar so that the negotiations are not overseen by agencies. Internationally, and an Iranian fighter jet has crashed in a residential area of the northwestern city of Tabriz, killing 3 people, including 2 crew. That's according to the state media. The head of the local Red Crescent organization said the plane smashed into a school and that one of the dead was a resident of the neighborhood. Local official Mohammed Bagar Hanova said that the school was closed at the time due to the coronavirus pandemic. And Chelsea manager Thomas Tuchel said it is not the time to laugh about Romelu Lukaku after the £97.5 million striker's recent struggles. Lukaku only touched the ball 7 times in Saturday's 1-0 win over Crystal Palace, the lowest number any player has managed in a 90-minute Premier League appearance since at least 2003, when the data was first recorded. He says now that he is in the spotlight, they will protect him, adding that Romelu will always be part of the solution. And finally, Newswire continues to urge you to continue observing the COVID-19 protocols. Most important, go get vaccinated so that you can protect yourself and those that you love, and also so that together we may win this fight against COVID-19 that continues to wreak havoc across the globe. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
Forgiveness is always conditional. Even before God, there's nothing like unconditional forgiveness.
Government doesn't pay you pension until you retire. In fact, they have no money for you. The day you retire, they look for you retire.
This country is punishing many young people. These young people are more susceptible to be deceived, to be taken advantage of, and they're more susceptible to be bought off.
Let us also talk about where we want our country to go. You know, we are a population of very young people.
We're in a state of capture. The judiciary is under duress. Parliament is in the pocket of the executive. You don't sit and wait for the regime to topple itself. It will never do so.
By the way, let me tell you, these guys are so persuasive. I'm telling you, they can persuade you to sell your grandmother. I'm telling you, they can sell sand in the desert.
City, has anybody on this program said to you as a guest, saying, "Oh, shut up, we don't want to be told what to do"? Have you ever that kind of... Has anybody been
I will not listen.
A bit of advice? Because you're working on the premise that we should all pay heed to these proverbs. It's a very suspect notion.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Good morning. We're on Tuesday, and what do the roads look like today? It looks like it's picking up in some parts, not too crazy at the moment. Likely to see some traffic on Gicheru this morning, also building up right around that roundabout as you get towards Haile Selassie. Apart from that, it's nothing really crazy right now. The Eastern Bypass coming off North Airport Road today, we see some of that traffic building up right now. And also off Wayaki Way coming into the city, we will see that dot of traffic. The Thika Superhighway looks like it's going to give some this morning as well. But right now, things seem to be still at a dull roar. Hopefully we can keep it that way until we get our wits about. Let's talk on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127. Let's keep things moving this Tuesday.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to...
It's Tuesday. Good morning. How are you doing? CT, good morning.
Well, you do. How are you this morning?
I'm trying to gather my wits and things, put them together.
Do not worry.
Eventually, it all comes together.
When something doesn't work, you will know it's not working.
Knock the side of the head. It's still there.
Yep.
Okay.
And if it's a microphone, just say 1, 2, 3, and you will know whether it's working or not.
Okay.
Time-honored tradition and a certainty that it will work when you follow that particular pattern.
When you knock it and you say, shh, shh.
1, 2, 3.
Hello.
Yeah, that's it. That's all.
Hello.
That's all you need to do.
Bas, it's working. How are you doing?
I am doing very well, thank you. And yourself?
I am well. I am well as well. Today, two of us are steering the ship. One, Eric Latiff, is off doing Eric Latiff things. You know what those are? We shall ask.
But you've just said so. You've explained. And you've been categorical about them. They are Eric
Latiff things.
Yes.
We shall ask him when he comes back. And the conversations continue either way. It's going to be a packed morning, a good thing. Important conversations to be had today. Right off the bat, we'll be talking with journalist Kwamchetsi Makhoha about what's going on in The Hague and this specific Gicheru case and the significance of it. We'll also look at the lay of the land in Luyaland, and our friend Barak Moluka will be with us at 8 o'clock to look at really what does this section of the country hold in terms of regional politics, in terms of regional support. We see that quite a number of women are sticking their neck out for political positions in this area as well. So he'll do that with us. And then from the mad world, Maddo will be with us at 9 o'clock. For more conversation. So it's going to be an interesting morning, and thank you for joining us and always being here with us as we have these conversations. Ndu Okoh, CT Muga with you today. All right, before we get into things, let's take a look at what's happening with COVID in the country and around the world. All right, let's start in country. 6 new cases, probably the lowest in the last 5 months. 6 new cases from a sample size of 2,889. And that means that we are looking at a 0.2% positivity rate, almost at 0% positivity. This comes from this particular sample size. This is a good thing. This is actually where you want the numbers to be, especially when you're coming off the back of a pandemic. Shall we look then at vaccination numbers? If we can find them, of course. So where are we with vaccines in terms of what the country is doing? We still have those 24 million vaccines that have come into the country. About 11 million of those are available for uptake. So the encouragement is to continue vaccinating. 426,389,058. Those are the numbers of COVID having been recorded around the world over time. Until now, we're looking at just under 6 million deaths from COVID. Not good numbers, but the US hit the 80 million mark just yesterday. 80,145,282, and moving very, very closely to 1 million COVID-19 deaths. The Queen of England, as we know, was tested positive for COVID-19, but she's doing rather well, improving from those symptoms. The symptoms were slight, nothing too worrying from what we are told. Okay, The First Minister wants to strike the balance between in terms of managing COVID-19. Let's look really quickly at this. Nicola Sturgeon to unveil plans for living with COVID. She's to unveil the Scottish Government's plan for managing the COVID-19 pandemic in a much less restrictive way in future. The First Minister will present a new strategic framework to MPs in a statement after 2 o'clock. It comes after Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced that all legal restrictions will end in England. Sturgeon said her aim was to get back to normalcy while maintaining vigilance against future outbreaks. Her statement could detail when existing restrictions are to be lifted, although the First Minister has cited testing and isolation as examples of measures which could continue to help keep the virus under control. Monday, Johnson told MPs that all of England's legal restrictions would be lifted Thursday, including the requirement to self-isolate for those who test positive, while free mass testing will stop in April. Routine contract chasing is to end, while close contacts of English positive cases will no longer be legally required to test daily. So everybody's lifting these restrictions and they're saying COVID is here, we're going to live with it, so let's do what we can while it's here without going too far off bat. So that's what we're looking at with COVID in the world. All right. At a few minutes after 6 o'clock, 13 minutes after 6 o'clock specifically, let's take a look at the weather and then we'll say hello to you. We see quite a number of you online already. Thanks for waking up early and joining us on Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll say hello to you and you say hello back in a bit. At 14 minutes after 6 o'clock, it's Kenya's biggest conversation.
I like listening to you guys. You're the default radio station in my car in the morning. Even the children listen to you guys.
I agree Parliament has failed this country. And I will say it again. We have not done what we should have done.
We know in this country, the Kenya prison sector is one of the most underfunded sector.
The way it is being done and the way we're calling it Huduma Namba the Msema Kweli is because all records will be there. You know, there are people who are now billionaires with no history as to how they got all these assets.
Yes. Anything that the president does that is not in accord with the constitution is an illegal act. You know, he shouldn't be doing it and he shouldn't be sitting here and trying to sort of guise it up.
I totally believe live transmission of results and allowing Kenyans to be able to view all this.
Spice up your life.
Cloudy conditions, what we're looking at in Nairobi at 17, highs of 24 and lows of 15 today. It's cloudy at 16 in Nakuru, highs of 27 and lows of 15. While 14 degrees and cloudy in Nyeri, it'll go to highs of 27 and lows of 13. Eldoret, clear at 13 with highs of 24 today. It's cloudy in Mombasa at 26, highs of 34 and lows of 26. And we're looking at cloudy conditions in Malindi at 26. We'll go to highs of 31. Kisumu at 19, cloudy this morning, highs of 28 and lows of 19. While Kakamega is cloudy at 16, it'll go to highs of 29 and lows of 15. Mostly clear conditions looking out into Kampala at 19. We'll see highs of 27 and lows of 19, while at 28, Dar es Salaam is cloudy this morning at 33. That'll be the high, coming down to lows of 27. Lagos, clear at 27, highs of 34 and lows of 26, while at 17, Johannesburg is clear. It'll go to highs of 28 and lows of 14. Kinshasa is raining this morning at 23, highs of 30. Out in Beijing, it's bang on 0 into early afternoon Tuesday. 4 will be the high and lows of -8. Paris, clear at 6, highs of 13 and lows of 4, while at 7, London is clear. We'll see highs of 14, back down to lows of 7, and at 5 degrees. Monday night, New York, clear conditions, highs of 11 and lows of 5.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
17 minutes
FM.
after 6 o'clock. Saying hello to everybody. Bushi Kiam Togo says, good morning. Shadrach, good morning to you. Kitisuru telling us to have a pleasant day. Vincent Ogutu, nawasikiliza nikiwa Bumala, Butula. See, do you know what county that is? 0 what?
I know it is Busia County.
Ah, okay. Brian Omunupi, hey, Wanamahele. Wanamahele is what now?
I honestly have no clue.
Okay. Thank you.
None whatsoever.
Oh, sawa. Odero Jr. says, good morning. Tuning from Racecourse today, or rather tuning from Kino, and Chris is tuned in from Racecourse, listening in from Lavington. Andrew Franklin is saying, hey, what's up with Jimmy Wajigi and the Guns? Sounds like a Western movie. Jimmy Wajigi and the Guns. Okay. Tuned in from Nyeri, Mombasa. That's where Tyrone is this morning. And CT, Inda Kwawere is asking, why do you look tired? UCTU. Why do you look tired? Are you tired?
I don't feel particularly tired.
No, you don't look too tired to me either.
I think I look pensive because there's something that I'm trying to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
That is probably what is being interpreted as my looking fatigued.
I see.
Yes.
Don't worry, he's not tired. He's full of life and vigor and vim and vitality. How many V words can we use? Thanks for tuning in this morning, guys. We see you all. We don't take it for granted that you're with us this morning as we go into these conversations. All right. Before we get into it, CT, today's proverb.
Yes, from Morocco.
Where there's Marrakesh.
Yes, and where there's
Casablanca.
Yes. An old cat will not learn to dance.
An old cat will not learn to dance. We assume that it can already dance.
Even if it can't, it's not going to bother.
The knees are a bit oil-less.
Probably will enjoy the music by just simply nodding and wobbling the head, or bobbing the head. But as for dancing, nah. It may not. You see, learning to dance implies that you didn't know how to dance. But I would extend this further and say, well, learning to dance a new jig, perhaps.
Oh, indeed. How about that for today, where Eric Latiff, who is not necessarily asleep, has reminded us, today is Tuesday, the 22 of the 2 of the 2022. It's a palindrome, meaning that you can read it the same way, forwards, backwards, upside down, and right side up. Can I say that again? Tuesday, 22/2/2022. It's an ambigram, can be read the same way, forward, backward, and upside down. So today's date is a palindrome and an ambigram. How's that for some linguistic gymnastics this morning? It's a special day. Some people are making wishes and burning candles on a day like this. You never know. How would it be when today, actually, so that 2/2/22 passed. At some point it was 22 minutes after 2 a.m. on Tuesday, the 22nd of the second month of the year 2022. My goodness. And it's going to happen again this afternoon at 2:22. It'll be 2:22 on the 22 of the 2 of the 2022. Hey! Okay. Now I'm tired.
Goodness gracious me.
I know, right?
What do you call a constant repetition of alliterations?
Multi-alliterations. I don't know. Goodness. So it's going to be a fun day.
Yes, speaking, rhyme all the time.
A stitch in time saves 9.
See?
Voila. May the worst of today's, or rather, may the best of today's be the worst of your tomorrows, as we say. Okay, so let's take a look at what's going on in the papers today. Reminding you of Standard e-paper. You can get onto for 10 shillings daily. You have access to archives and you have access to the headlines and the daily news. As we look at what's going on in the country and around the world, one big thing, CT, that's jumping out right now. Kenyans use social media to demand lower food prices. It's reported across board. One of the things that we are looking at. Kenyans use social media. High cost of living kicks up a storm as data shows prices of basic food items have been increasing in the last 12 months, with no action taken by politicians who are too busy campaigning. The situation is worsened by bad weather, meaning lack of rains, and that has affected farming. So clearly the harvest is down, and Kenyans are kicking up a storm. Prolonged drought, high taxes on farm inputs and fuel, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic, have colluded to throw Kenyans into a tailspin of unprecedented high cost of living. This has in turn kicked up a storm on social media, with Kenyans on Twitter calling for the immediate reduction of food prices. You can't have a quick fix in an election year. You will be daydreaming if you expect a quick fix. This is according to the Eastern Africa Farmers Federation Chief Executive Stephen Mushiri. But Timothy Ngai, a research fellow with Tegemeo Institute, a think tank, reckons there is an element of noise in the Twitter storm. For the last 10 years, the prices of food products normally shoot up between January and May. After May, they would go down, according to Dr. Njagi, adding that there was a need for people to rationalize their spending based on this pattern. Food prices have been on the rise over the last 12 months, following poor rains and increase in the cost of farm inputs. Close to 2 million Kenyans from 23 counties are staring at starvation as their crops and livestock die of lack of water. In January last year, 1,000 shillings would have bought you an average of 11 food items at a cost of 883 shillings. However, last month, a consumer could only be left with 1 shilling for the same items, according to official data. These items include a kilo of loose maize flour, mangoes, spinach, sukuma wiki or kales, cabbages, tomatoes, carrots, onions, and Irish potatoes. You could also throw into a shopping basket about 2 kg of sifted maize flour. Cabbages have experienced the sharpest rise, with a kilo retailing at an average of 50 shillings in January this year, compared to 39 in the same month last year. A kilo of spinach, on the other hand, rose by more than a fifth to retail at 68 shillings, while the same unit of onions that went for 106 shillings in January last year now goes for 128. So, there's a storm and Kenyans are kicking it up, saying, you know what? We can't afford to eat. So what are we saying? That you can't afford life. And saying, election year or not, reduce food prices. Do what you need to do. Apply subsidies. Apply common sense. That the Kenyans over whom you're governing are saying we cannot afford life. That's it. That's what's going on now. You can see a significant rise over the last 10 years. You can see an even more significant rise over the last 12 months. And so the question is, what are we going to do about it? What is going to be done about this situation?
What needs to be done isn't some tightly held secret or something that is difficult to figure out. It isn't. The perennial discussion in our country seems to be whether it is those who wield the power to execute such things are willing to do so. An understanding of what needs to be done, again, is not a private, secretive matter that has been hidden in some 300-mile hole underground, where you need, God knows, a seismic shift in the earth's crust for you to sort of like arrive at an understanding of. The human resource in this country who have studied these particular matters will tell you with great clarity what needs to be done. And it isn't as though it has not been suggested. The discussion about whether this matter will be managed by this budget-making parliament that we have, and whether queries and an insistence that some of these things be done. The focus of our parliament isn't in ensuring that the people actually live good lives, that people live comfortable lives, that people live safe lives. They will talk about what they want to do. When you interview them, they'll give the impression that there's nothing that concerns them more. But the actions, unfortunately, belie these statements.
The question is there something that could have been done about this legislatively to see that we don't have this high cost?
Look, the budget tells you in advance what they're going to do, the taxes you're going to have. You are told. Now, because you're told, you know, the moment you have a budget that seeks to spend more than we can actually raise, you know we are going to borrow. The consequences of these things are obvious.
Right.
So at that point, there was a big dance and song that, well, it's really song and dance, but I'm going to start with song, dance and then song, about how they managed to decrease the price of bread. Come on, for heaven's sake.
And then it went back, kind of slipped back into
If
under the door.
you can reduce the price of 1 kilo of onga to 20 shillings, then I will understand what you're saying. Because then you're saying some of the 100 shillings can actually eat.
Yes.
If you are saying that green grams, the cost can reduce by another 50%, just look at what people eat and what they need to eat nutritiously. Reduce those. People can do without bread. They don't have to eat bread.
They can eat cake.
They can eat ugali. Okay?
Some people call it cake, yeah. Huh?
Yes, exactly. So, Parliament has always had this power, this particular Parliament. They have the power. So, there's some token query of 1 or 2 items. How on earth are you helping the Mwananchi with that tokenism? How?
Because this, look, at the crux of the matter, that this is the difference between what folks will say somebody was talking and that they actually really helped us, that you saw it, living, breathing, tangible examples of how a legislative decision then translated into my life. You get it?
Yes.
That people can actually go through the chronology of events over the last 5 years, for example, and say, hold on a minute, I can actually see that something was done, that I spend less shilling to fill my stomach, and so that I have a little bit extra to do something else. Without evidence of that, you haven't helped. You haven't done anything. That I cannot touch this thing that you said you are going to do. And for a lot of people, it's in the pocket. Where am I going to feel it? That you've actually done something for me? It's in my pocket. And if food has gotten food, the thing that every day is the measure of whether you're able to succeed or not, that you have eaten, right? That you can afford to have eaten, has not been fulfilled over time. You compound the frustration year after year after year, and so they end up telling you, well, you've done nothing.
You know, one of the things that makes people survive in urban centers is there's an aspect of our hidden economy that isn't spoken of. They are fed by people who live upcountry in the rural areas. Meaning somebody grows maize, dries it, sends it to you in the great city or a big town. You look for a posho mill, and for a small amount, you have maize flour. And all you do with that maize that has been sent is you keep it dry. You make sure that moisture doesn't get into it. So it's the same. There are many people whose survival in the great city has to do with what folks back in the ancestral homes do by sending them food. That's what makes life affordable. And then there are those who've understood that in their business, they can actually buy directly from the farm. You can sidestep the middleman.
Right.
It isn't rocket science. This one, if there's anything that shows not the incapacity, but the wanton disregard that people who are elected to represent their people have towards, yes, who have elected them, it is this. How can this be a cry on a daily basis, and yet attention that could be given to it, and those who are charged with this mandate are able to, and yet they don't. All they do is pay lip service. How do you explain this, and how on earth do you arrive at understanding this particular disregard?
Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, inexplicable. It's 29 minutes to 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads with traffic. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We come back and continue taking a look at the papers, news in the country and around the world. Okay, so picking up in certain parts of the city, we're looking at it on Gong Road, right around the roundabout. Beyond that, not too badly off. Uhuru Highway is looking good this morning. It's likely to pick up a few minutes after 7 o'clock, just so that you can be prepared for that one. The outer ring is looking very, very good as well. Muranga Road, though, that picked up a while ago. Coming off a Thika Superhighway, we see some traffic has built up. Actually, not some, a lot of it, bumper to bumper, all the way beyond the Utali Drift. Now we're going towards the junction from Outer Ring, so that's one to watch. Kiambu Road also joining here. Limuru Road, for now, a good time for you to take advantage of it. No traffic in both directions, in and outbound. The city centre is what's taking the largest hit right now. Uhuru Highway, you're probably going to see traffic all the way through and through to Westlands. Coming off of Mombasa Road today, it'll take you to Imara Daima at that junction, and then it's going to clog up just a little bit. Not to forget, at the ICD route, you can use the bypass. Use that to get out into the city. Longer route, but it'll save you a bit of a headache this morning. What are we trying to do today? We're trying to keep things moving. Let us know what you see in your neck of the woods. Tell us, you find a good route that folks can use, or you stuck somewhere. Let us know and see how we can help. SpiceFM KE is how you can let us know. Talk to us via text on 40127.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
7 o'clock on Tuesday, 22 of 2022. I'm not going to get tired of saying that today. So, just brace yourself for it. Okay, CT, what do you have?
Two things. One, something interesting. Yes. This particular, these two things seem to me like they need to be mentioned. One has to do with issues pertaining to poll cases. We know how these things drag. In our history bears witness to what has actually happened. There are many cases that took place immediately after an election and ended just when the 5-year term was actually coming to an end. So you actually wonder what purpose it serves if it is proved that this particular individual indeed had been involved in some malpractice. We've had cases where, yes, someone goes to court, but our laws are such that you continue serving in that position until the matter is proved otherwise. And you go through the whole hog. Magistrate court, judge, just a high court, appellant court,
Supreme Court.
Yeah, and that for 5 years have gone by. The magistrate, remember we had this discussion with some of the people, some of our justices who came to our studio. Now, the Chief Justice yesterday announced that the Judiciary has trained the following. The 361 magistrates who are going to handle election-related disputes. Focus.
Yeah.
Dispute. And she has also said that the ones which are pending will be completed within the next 4 months. Okay? In addition to this, that she said another group of 119 judicial officers have already been identified for appointment as special magistrates to hear and determine offences under the Election Offences Act. These include hate speech. So you go around saying crazy things and see where this will find you.
The Chief Justice is ready for you.
Yes. And they've designated areas for this. Nairobi, and it includes, these are not the only areas, but they include Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Eldoret, and Nakuru. Okay? Now, she also says that NCIC had raised concerns about the delays in hearing and determination. But now, in response to that, they're saying, with what we've done, we want to assure the NCIC and the public that we are preparing ourselves to be able to handle these matters judiciously.
Okay?
So, preparation. The judiciary has done a good job in trying to ensure that they stay ahead of the curve. But the other thing that caught my attention was a headline on page 8 in the Star, State Officer Retirement Home, School Fees Kitty for Ex-Soldiers. An interesting thing here that the government plans to establish. Okay? They are considering establishing, it hasn't been established, the Defence Forces Retirement Home to provide residential services, meaning people who've retired and have complications and have difficulties being looked after in their retirement homes. A structured retirement home for such officers. But that's not the only one. They're proposing that they also throw in continuous counseling services, not just for them, but also for their families.
For the families.
Yes. But for this to happen, they will need to establish something through what they are calling Military Veterans Bill 2022. It's supposed to establish a framework, regulatory and institution for management of military veterans affairs. Okay?
I would. This is a good thing. Do you remember I mean, it was many months ago now, but that story of a retired officer or a discharged officer who was seen walking around the streets of Garissa, I believe, and they had to have him committed. And it was clear that what he was suffering from was post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
So now here you have retired officers who probably need a hand.
Oh, there are many.
Yeah, who probably need a hand later on in life, not just economically or, with funding or anything like that, but also with psychosocial support. Because some of the stuff that they see out there is really, really gory.
More so when we have areas of conflict where our defense forces are engaged in. These matters then become pertinent. They're not sitting in the barracks going for exercises.
No.
They are actual conflict situations that they are involved in. But in addition to this, they're also hoping to fund through this bill, they want to create what they call the Dependents Education Fund, so that such veterans, should they have dependents, the education of these dependents can be catered for. Again, good things. But I have to ask, surely all this time it hadn't been considered. Yeah. I mean, I'm just asking.
Of course. They say better late than never. Well, look, even this is not cast in stone just yet, is it? Because we're still talking about it being in the consideration stage.
These are proposals. Yes.
Can we emphasize how important it would be to have something like this? Because more often than not, you have people stuck in sticky situations because of the experiences that they've had while they've been in active service or active duty. And here they are out. It would be nice to have, because they spent the majority of their lives serving the country and state, right? So maybe this would not be a bad thing. And
what I like
beyond consideration.
What I liked about it is the span of time that it covers. It looks after people who served in the KDF after 1963 and those who served in the King's African Rifles before 1963. They would also be eligible, so long as one was in the military.
Okay.
It is a good thing.
It is.
Long overdue, but it is a good thing.
It would be nice if it went, again, I'm going to insist, it would be nice if it went beyond consideration stage and actually went to a place where this is something that could be realized. Can't say that's enough. All right, let's look at a story for a conversation that we'll be having at about 7 o'clock with journalist Kwamchetsi Makoha. ICC witness links Ruto to bribery money. 2 million shillings was to buy loyalty. That's what it's going for, CT, nowadays, if you have some loyalty. ICC court prosecutor yesterday lost a bid to present a pre-recorded testimony by the second witness testifying against lawyer Paul Gicheru. Trial Chamber 3 Judge Maria Samba, in her ruling, directed the deputy prosecutor Anton Steinberg to stick to the hearing plan, so none of this changing in between. It also emerged that this witness, P0341, linked Gicheru to bribery and alleged that Deputy President William Ruto was the source of the money. But according to court records, he did not testify against Ruto and the radio journalist Joshua Arap Sang. He had, however, been earmarked as a potential witness. Court record reads the man was a 2007-2008 Pole violence victim. According to the prosecution, the witness implicated Ruto as the source of the bribery money, adding that he, Ruto, was happy with the arrangement between Gicheru and P0341. P0341 agreed not to attend any more ICC meetings, but in fact subsequently continued to do so. Ruto was pleased with the agreement reached with him. On the pre-recorded statement, the judge said the application had been made too late in the day, which was a disadvantage to Gicheru's team. So, at the end of the day, this testimony is going to be heard by the court, and it looks like it's something that could be damning to Gicheru's case. Steinberg asked on Monday to admit the statement by P0341, arguing that the witness's level of education and his age would require the prosecution to take 9 hours to lead him through. Gicheru's lawyer, Michael Carvanas, opposed the application. He argued that it was impossible to cross-examine the witness if he could not follow what he wrote in his statement. The witness is said to only comprehend his mother tongue and Swahili. So, we'll be looking at the intrigues of this after 7, but it just looks very clear here that Gicheru's case has taken a lot of hits so far, and it would be nice to look at the intrigues and see what this means and the significance of the same. Right?
You know, Energy CS, Monica Juma, Dr. Monica Juma,
yes,
had been gunning for a certain post in the Commonwealth. And it was for the race was for the Secretary General of the 53 Nation Commonwealth, suggesting Secretary General of the Commonwealth.
Yes.
53 nation, many.
Big deal.
No. This is mega. It's not big. Okay. Now, according to what I'm reading here, she has withdrawn her candidature.
Pourquoi?
Many things are said here, but the thing that stands out, that it wasn't really support for her as support for Kenya. There was inadequate support.
From whom?
Well, other countries have to support your candidature.
Okay, so the external support was not adequate.
Yes,
okay.
yes. For her to have thrown her hat in the ring, it means there was support within the country. But then you can't elect yourself.
This is true.
Yes.
Okay.
Other people have to come in and they have to play their part.
Why was there no external support, or why was there lack of external support, I think is the question. What happened?
Enough reason hasn't been given here. I've been reading this, trying to figure out if it has. There is more postulation and suggestion and innuendo rather than anything that I could consider to be hardcore. Okay, facts.
That's interesting.
Let me say, the ministry is quoted as saying that a change of leadership will still be needed at the top of the secretariat, and that Joma's withdrawal would allow time for another candidate to enter the race and build the consensus that Kenyan candidates could not. Yes.
That's interesting. It would have been nice to see her sitting in that particular position.
My thoughts are this. Remember how we struggled and fought and wrestled to get a position in the
WTO.
WTO and then Security Council.
Yes.
Now, it would appear that we want too much.
Kenya cannot continue having its name.
I'm being a conspiracy theorist here, but surely, Kwani, Kenya, I mean, WTO, then you want this
Security
Council, then now you want Secretary General Commonwealth. Guys, for heaven's sake, the other countries in the world.
A little conspiracy is good for the stomach in the morning. Use that as a proverb one day.
My conspiracy.
Your conspiracy is
not what has been written here.
Your conspiracy is good for your stomach every now and then in the morning. It's a quarter to 7 o'clock. Still taking a look at what's happening in the news here and around the world. We'll come back and continue with that. 6:45 on the nose.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Actually, 14 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is an interesting story that's on page 1 of The Nation. My 31 years in prison. For more than a decade, Samuel Kahiga lived in the shadow of death after being sentenced to the gallows for robbery with violence in August 1991. Even though the death sentence was later commuted to life in jail, thus saving him from the hangman's noose, his life remained an emotional roller coaster. Inside, the story of a man lucky to taste freedom once again, and he was released from Naivasha maximum GK prison on Friday. The story is covered extensively. For more than a decade, this is where he lived, the death sentence having been commuted. He was released last week from the Naivasha maximum security prison. Kahiga was one of the longest serving inmates, having had a stint at Kibos and Kamiti. Cumulatively, the 56-year-old ex-convict stayed behind bars for 31 years before he secured his freedom through a court process commonly known as resentencing. Remember, we had a chat about that with members of the Judiciary a couple of months ago.
Yes.
When the firmly secured doors were finally opened Friday, he grinned from ear to ear, sighed with relief before looking back in utter disbelief. He was clearly overwhelmed by the moment, but he walked into a world unknown, one he had bid goodbye to 31 years ago. He said in an emotional statement, "At one point, I gave up leaving jail. Being released was a miracle for me. Before exiting the highly guarded prison, he was mobbed by some of his colleagues who adored his resilience, with some weeping as they bade him goodbye. On Saturday, Kahiga, dressed in an immaculate jungle green suit, went back to his Malewa village in Kipipiri constituency, escorted by the chaplain in charge of the facility, Reverend Kennedy Chumo. He sat pensively inside Chumo's car, lost in thought, and emotion sweeping over him. He relived the bittersweet memories after being jailed in the early 90s. As a capital offender, he was treated like a pariah, he said, only allowed 30 minutes to bask in the sun before being taken back to his cell. Retracing the steps that sent him to prison, he had his bosom buddies to blame. He says he was a victim of his own machinations. He became greedy and he paid the price. It is true that he was involved in robbery with violence, armed robbery, and this incident took place in Kisumu. He was lured by his friends, he said, and the promise of quick money. He narrated how he was approached by a group of friends who asked him to loan them 500 shillings to fuel their vehicle. At the time, he was a scrap metal dealer and was also in the business of selling soup. It was here that my partners in crime bumped into me. He asked them to refund the money with interest, but they convinced him about a lucrative offer on the table. They asked him to join them on a robbery mission. They made it look easy, intimating that he would walk away with 300,000 shillings. He joined them, but the mission fell flat because the Asian businessman they were to attack had deposited the money minutes earlier. But they went ahead and robbed him of other valuables, including his vehicle. One of the accomplices did not play to the script and used the stolen car as a taxi. Brilliant. Before investigators finally caught up with them. Their cover was blown and they were smoked out. His life in crime was cut short at the first attempt, earning him years in jail. And as he's come out 31 years later, he says crime does not pay. His release was timely, according to the chaplain. The officer in charge of the Naivasha prison, Hassan Tari, described the former inmate as an inspiration and role model to many. He hailed his mentorship program, saying he had helped many inmates mend their ways while serving their sentence. Who'd have thunk it? 31 years later, and he's out.
31 years, a lifetime.
I know.
An entire generation.
Indeed. His life had just started. He was 25 years old. He was 25 years old at the time.
But at least he's out.
Right. He's out and has the lessons that he's learned.
You know, one thing that is certain, one does learn lessons as to whether those lessons are useful and that they will assist him in becoming a more productive member of society or that they will have hardened him. That's a different story and a different discussion for yet another day.
Indeed.
Yes.
What else you got, Cici?
Well, I am looking at some very interesting discussions here. This is Business Daily. How Russia-Ukraine row will hurt Kenyan homes. Yes, disruptions from any military action or sanction could see fuel, bread, and wheat prices increase. Let me read so that you can understand how.
Okay.
Kenyan households are braced for higher energy and food costs as a result of the ongoing threats of war between Russia and Ukraine, which has sent global oil prices soaring and restricted wheat exports. See?
Yep.
The conflict could also trigger a sell of shares, pulling down a market that has fully recovered from the economic damage caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. A major risk event usually sees investors rushing back to the bonds and to the safest assets in what could hurt the flow of foreign investment into Nairobi Securities Exchange.
It's already making us think like there's already a situation of war. And I think
but this
jumping
one,
the gun just a little
not
bit.
Just jumping the gun, beating war drums.
Surely, you know. Oh, I mean, it just sounds like a repetition of what Biden has been saying over the last couple of days. They're going to attack. There will be war. And I think
I'm actually not going to look at even Biden. I'm going to look at an attitude that the West have. The beating of drums of war drums was similar when it came to COVID. Chinese.
Yeah.
The facts weren't in. Omicron, South African.
Facts again.
The facts were not in. Research and findings into the flu virus that is found in North America. And the similarity that the flu virus had to COVID-19 published didn't see too much light of day. How it is that with all the precautions, Western European countries bore the brunt of COVID.
Yep.
America bore the brunt of COVID.
Still is, yeah.
You argue around it, talk around it, do whatever you want around it. The explanation that it was Chinese, you have to ask, so what exactly are you saying? What are you saying? Now, this matter is before the Security Council in the UN.
Yeah.
It's being discussed.
Did it need to?
You know, the Security Council determines what they need to discuss, okay? Why did they not discuss at great length the conflict that has been taking part in the eastern part of Ukraine for the longest time?
For the last 14 years at least.
Yes. Why has that not been a discussion?
Yeah.
They didn't think this could escalate and bring about other problems.
No, but the minute the country such as the United States makes such a declaration, then it becomes a matter of priority in terms of discussion. I'm sorry, but I can't see it any other way.
Look at the discussion that took place before this. European Union membership, NATO alliance. Now, the moment you have these discussions of power shifts, power brokering, power positioning, what you're inviting is a discussion of war, whether it actually exists or not, whether there's an imminent threat or not. And do you know what's lost in the whole discussion? The Ukrainians.
Yeah. Where are they? Again, as a sovereign state, who, for goodness sake, should be able to say, hey, hello, this is what we want. But people are arguing on their behalf. People are putting a position for them that we've not heard their voice.
Some are claiming, Ukraine is actually part of Russia. Yes.
And Ukraine is still there.
And they're saying, no, we are able to make our own decisions. Yeah, but it's a good thing if they're members of the EU. Now, if Russia and America want to quarrel,
take your quibble elsewhere.
For heaven's sake.
Not on somebody else's
It's a
sovereign
huge
ground.
planet. You can find some other place to quarrel, because every time there has to be an enemy that is being fought. And if there isn't one, find one.
Sure. And the enemy, just what it does, it allows you to flex your muscle just a little bit.
A little bit.
Whether it is imagined or otherwise, it's always platform for muscle flexing by countries.
All those forces that pulled off Afghanistan, all that military, that huge military complex, and that massive show of force, it isn't useful sitting in the barracks.
No.
They have to be deployed elsewhere.
Absolutely.
And what you do is you ensure that your buddies and compadres in NATO receive assistance. And assistance doesn't mean you talk about it. It's personnel, it's equipment. And equipment here are not lawn mowing machines. No. Military hardware.
There we go.
Yeah. So, Russia has a point.
They do.
They are not kicking a fuss over nothing. But at the same time, they also, if we're to call the West warmongers, well, so are they.
Everybody is scrambling for this piece of political, geopolitical real estate. Everybody wants a piece of the pie.
Yep.
Okay, really quickly, the last story before we tell you a little bit about a safer internet. Nyeri school. Remember that school that was basically being falling apart? Well, the school will not be closed down despite the poor state of facilities. Nandi County Commissioner Herman Shambi has said Nyeri Primary School will not be closed down despite the dilapidated state of classrooms and other facilities. Mr. Shambi was on a tour to the school with education officials days after the school was highlighted in the Standard and was met with abject state of the school located in Bonchoge Aldai sub-county. While inspecting the classrooms, the team found a snake tucked between the roof and the mud wall. How about that? Surprisingly, the learners were unmoved. Clearly something that they've seen before. And instead, they remained seated until they were ordered to get out of the classroom. Sheesh. Sylvester Betts, the school's head teacher, said that one of the locals had donated an acre piece of land for the construction of the school in 2011. He said the Orthodox Church also hosts the schools located along the Kisumu and Nandi border, and due to lack of funds, the debilitated structure had led to the invasion of dangerous snakes into the classroom. It's screaming, shut me down, but clearly they've decided that there's something they can do for the 150 learners. Registration timelines are still there. Commissioner says something can be done. Let's wait and see what the fate of this institution will be. But for now, it's not being shut down. Hopefully they can get the animals out and have a place for the students to study. Okay, coming round to a few minutes to 7 o'clock. Let's look quickly at how we can make the internet a safer place for children to learn. The world celebrated Safer Internet Day on the 8th of February, and with that, the Communications Authority of Kenya marked the day with the launch of Cyber Soldiers. What is that, you may ask? It's a safe and easy and fun way for our kids to learn about the threats they will face on the internet. It's not a matter of will they face threats. They will face threats. It's now to be able to learn and be able to spot them for what they are. It's available to play free on the website and also best played on phone or tablet. It'll teach kids on how to recognize the threats and how to fight them. The objective of the game is to learn about how to deal with online threats and vulnerabilities. Okay, so how can parents and kids alike access the game? Well, you can go to www.ca.go.ke, select campaigns, and then click on the tab for either Play Cyber Soldiers or Online or Child Online Protection. There are ways in which you can protect your kids and yourselves from many things, such as cyberbullying, which we'll look at in a minute. It's all about making the internet a safer place for children. So not to forget, www.ca.go.ke/ child protection. The conversation has been made possible by the Communications Authority of Kenya, making the internet a safer place for children all around the country. Okay, coming to seconds to 7 o'clock. Coming into 7 o'clock, we will have a conversation with journalist, satirist Kwamchetsi Makoha. We'll be taking a look at what's happening at The Hague, the International Criminal Court, and the case with Paul Gicheru, and what it means and why is it so important for us to discuss some of these things. Wherever it is you're tuned around the country, 94.4 in Mombasa, 97.7 in Malindi, across Nyeri, Kisumu, and other cities in the country. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. The conversation continues as we come back. Not to forget that we're live streaming YouTube, Facebook, and you can also keep your comments coming in on Facebook and Twitter. Continues. For now, it's 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning, this is Newswire. Dennis Aseto. President Uhuru Kenyatta flagged off a consignment of emergency relief supplies to 23 arid and semi-arid counties affected by drought. The relief intervention is said to benefit 2.3 million Kenyans in the affected counties. President Kenyatta reaffirmed the government's commitment to providing both short-term and long-term solutions to drought by investing in community-based resilience and drought preparedness programs. The head of state emphasized that the government is focused on implementing interventions that will build resilience in all the vulnerable households, diversify livelihoods from drought-sensitive activities to drought-resilient ones, as well as improve on early warnings and impact forecasting system. The Orange Democratic Movement Party has denied businessman Jimmy Wanjigi access to its forthcoming National Delegates Convention, claiming that he is not a party delegate. This is after Wanjigi claimed that he is an ODM delegate from Nairobi and will be attending the NDC slated for 25th and 26th of February. Responding to Wanjigi's statement, George Alado said the businessman is not shortlisted as a delegate. He added that the entire list of delegates invited to the convention has already been submitted and Wanjigi's name is not included. And the Directorate of Criminal Investigations has given presidential aspirant Jimmy Wanjigi 72 hours to surrender 11 firearms and 485 ammunitions that are in his possession illegally. In a letter, the DCI says Wanjigi doesn't have a firearm license and will be arrested if he fails to heed the directive. This even as the DCI revealed that Wanjigi ignored summons to appear before the Firearms Licensing Board last year following a directive by CS Interior Fred Matiang'i for a mandatory vetting of civilian firearm holders. DCI also accuses him of congregating highly trained persons in the use of firearms for ulterior motives. Among the firearms Wanjigi is expected to surrender is a Saska, a shotgun, a rifle, 4 Glock pistols, among others. Wanjigi is expected to later address the media on the same. We will bring you that information when we get it. 20 Kenya-based startups have been selected to benefit from a British Council program funded by the Foreign Commonwealth Office to support the growth of the local fashion industry. The businesses will form the second cohort of the Creative DNA program launched in 2020 to develop skills, knowledge and global networks for local fashion designers. The program is focused on promoting alternative and innovative approaches to the global fashion system with the ambition of demonstrating that the fashion sector in Kenya is a professional choice for young people and a valuable contributor to the creative economy. And 12 Kenyan employment agencies in Qatar have been blacklisted over the poor treatment of staff by the Gulf state. This followed talks between Central Organization of Trade Union Secretary General Francis Atwoli and the Minister of Labour in Qatar, where they agreed to do away with employment agencies that have been used to sneak in Kenyans. In accordance with the decision, the closed offices may not engage in the activity of recruiting labour or concluding contracts with employers. In the meeting, they also agreed that Kenya should establish government-to-government relations with Qatar so that the negotiations are not overseen by agencies. Internationally, and the Nigerian military has killed and wounded children in an airstrike in neighboring Niger. The attack took place in the village of Nachade in the region of Maradi, Niger, a few kilometers from the border with Nigeria. 7 children were killed and 5 wounded. Elsewhere, an Iranian fighter jet crashed in a residential area of the northwestern city of Tabriz, killing 3 people, including 2 crew. The head of the local Red Crescent organization said the plane smashed into a school and that one of the dead was a resident of the neighborhood. Local officials, Mohammed Baga Honava, said that the school was closed at the time due to the coronavirus pandemic. And finally, Chelsea manager Thomas Tuchel says it is not time to laugh about Romelu Lukaku after the £97.5 million striker's recent struggles. Lukaku only touched the ball 7 times in Saturday's 1-0 win over Crystal Palace, the lowest number any player has managed in 90-minute Premier League appearance since at least 2003, when that data was first recorded. He says now that he is on the spotlight, they'll protect him, adding that Romelu will always be part of the solution. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
All right. Still seeing it building up in certain parts of the city this morning. After 7 o'clock, it looks like it's now when things are becoming absolutely crazy. On the Thika Superhighway, that is melting vehicle into vehicle all the way now past that junction for Outer Ring. And then going beyond Zimmerman today, we've seen that behavior since the beginning of last week. It looks like it's going to continue. Southern Bypass actually is looking very good. There's an option for you to get off Mombasa Road if you can leave before you get onto that SGR station, because out beyond the SGR, you're going to have to be stuck there and then going towards General Motors, which looks like it's going to be packed just a little bit. And North Airport Road also building up in traffic here and there. We're looking at Langata Road. I started doing that thing this morning all the way beyond the estates on Yonka Estate, even beyond that today. All right, Uhuru Highway into the city and then out towards Westlands is where we see that action happening. Limuru Road, in and outbound traffic. Wangari Maathai then coming out into that direction. Ring Road, Westlands, absolute mess. Okay, so officially in traffic hour early, but we're in traffic hour. Let's try and keep things moving as best we can while remaining sane. Let us know what's happening with you, where you are. If you find a good route or you find a faster one, talk to us on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up,
7 minutes after
not down.
7 o'clock on the 22nd of February, the second month of the year 2022. An ambigram and a palindrome. And good for us, because at this hour, we have somebody who can maybe now open up some of those words and tell us what they mean. So let's do it in numbers. 2 of the 22 of the 2022. This afternoon will be really fun and a bit of a tongue twister if you're sitting in those circles. N'est-ce pas? Yes, pa. 8 minutes after 7 o'clock now. You're tuned into Kenya's biggest conversation. Ndu Okoh, C.T. Muga with you in the room. Eric is off doing Eric Latiff things. When he comes back tomorrow, we'll ask him what these Eric Latiff things entail. Before we introduce our guest, let's hear today's proverb.
Yes, it's a Moroccan proverb. An old cat will not learn to dance.
Must have a lot of cats in Morocco.
I wouldn't know.
They do. I'm serious, they do.
Good for them. Actually, if you look at the what I may call a trajectory of proverbs that come from this continent, many of them involve animals. And the reason they involve animals is because we have those animals and we live with those animals. So they are part and parcel of our folklore. So the mention of them, you don't hear of a Russian proverb involving an elephant. Or an American proverb involving a giraffe. You don't.
Dog. Okay. No, you don't. Okay. All right. So our guest in the studio for this hour, wherever you're tuned in around the country, in Nairobi on our different frequencies and our live stream on YouTube, joining us in the Situation Room this morning is our good friend, journalist, Kwamchetsi Mahoka. And he's with us today. Kwam, good morning.
Good morning.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
Makoha.
I want to put the H and I want to say it properly. But he's such a gentleman, he's not going to correct
ask the
me.
man how it is pronounced.
Okay. The way you would say it when you are at home, Kwamchetsi, how would it be
Don't
pronounced?
anglicize it.
No, I'm easy. I'm easy, but it's Kwamchetsi Makoha.
You see? Makoha, right? Makoha. Okay. Karibu sana.
Asante, shukran.
So, I mean, jumping and getting off into this conversation with you, because this is something that you've studied well and are keeping abreast of. The whole ICC Hague happenings and the situation when Paul Gicheru presented himself in the Netherlands many, many months ago. Perhaps it wasn't what he was expecting, that we've seen things go so quickly then into a trial. What do you make of this whole situation? Maybe we can talk about what exactly is going on with this case at the ICC right now, and what does it portend for the country?
Thank you. I have been watching the ICC for a while. I think going on to 10 years.
Yeah.
And working at Journalists for Justice, I had a front row seat with all the processes at the court. And it's one of the things, the Gicheru surrender is very puzzling because since his arrest warrant came out, he took 5 years before he surrendered. He had 5 years to ruminate and think this over and then decided one day, no, I'm just going to go and clear my name. For me, I think that just first of all rings a warning bell because I don't think that Paul Gicheru was acting, if he's indeed guilty, he was acting on for his own benefit. There were people who were beneficiaries of the scheme to interfere with witnesses. The clearest beneficiary is Deputy President William Ruto, whose case collapsed. He denied us a trial. Yeah, right. Yeah, he denied us a trial because the witnesses pulled out or died. And that's it. So this case basically investigates what happened to some of those witnesses. And Paul Gicheru has been wanted for the past 5 years, alongside Walter Osapiri and Philip Bett, for interfering with witnesses. There are people who came forward and said, look, there are people who approached us, they've told us to pull out of this case and not to give evidence. And so the prosecution began this case to try and stall the interference in the Ruto Sang case. Right.
Even as we look at it, because now we're getting coverage on a daily basis, we're seeing this, and the trial is moving actually very quickly, maybe a lot quicker than Gicheru himself thought this would happen. As he presented himself in the Netherlands many months ago, I mean, we can't tell what his personal intent was, but it would, as you say, seem as though he wanted to go and clear his name. There'd been 5 years since an arrest warrant had been sent out. They knew where he was.
Yes.
Why would they not have come for him if it was so important for him to be tried?
They did. They did. They asked for Kenya to extradite him. I think there have been like 4, 5, 8 memoirs from the office of the prosecutor begging the Attorney General in Kenya and the Minister for Interior to extradite these 3 individuals because, as you know, witness interference or interfering in the administration of justice is the equivalent of contempt of court in Kenya. Contempt of court is supposed to be summarily tried because you are challenging the authority of the court. And so because of that, that's why I think this trial is moving at the speed at which it is, because it's supposed to protect the integrity of the court process. Now, the office of the prosecutor asked for extradition. They issued arrest warrants. Initially, they were sealed. They communicated them to the Kenya government. The Kenya government told them to, take a hike, right? So they opened up, they unsealed those warrants and made them public in the hope, of course, that that would cause embarrassment. The Kenyan government, I think, is not easily embarrassed. So once the warrants were issued, then the individuals went to court, and there's been long litigation in the Kenyan courts, basically stalling the attempt to extradite them and creating excuses for the government not to surrender them. So it was puzzling that with the protection that Gicheru had from the Kenya government, and also, he was chair of the public procurement oversight board. So it's a government appointee. So with all that protection, he elected at some point, 5 years down the line, that no, I suddenly have a conscience and I need to clear it. I need to clear my name.
Isn't it ironic? You see, the public procurement, there's a bit to it, and disposal. You see, there's a disposal bit. And then this person who was charged with actually making every attempt that could possibly be known to dispose of justice is ironically made the chairman of this particular board, a really important board. But that having been said, on a light note, when Mr. Gicheru's going to The Hague didn't happen in isolation. No.
Full glare,
but other things were also happening. It isn't just that somebody had a crisis of conscience and suddenly decided that the best thing for him to do was to set things right before the Hague and his creator.
So why? No. And I think that's a question that many are asking. Why? You know that folks have been looking for you. You know that there's potentially damning evidence against your name and this entire case that you had previously built in your favor, right? These things are there, they exist, because there's no way they're asking. There's no way they're asking for extradition. There's no way a warrant of arrest has been given if there isn't something that can hold water that these folks have against you. Why take yourself to the foot of the door of potential trouble?
When did he take himself to The Hague?
What are we talking about, 7 months ago now?
Precisely. Was that before or after the handshake?
Post
handshake.
Precisely. Now, what did the handshake and everything that happened after it, what did it portend?
Do you see a connection?
Absolutely. I mean, it's clear. I'm resisting making that conclusion, but I think anyone who looks at it clearly can just see it's as clear as day. Yeah, because he had 5 years. He had 5 years in which, he was wanted by International Criminal Court. He didn't have time for them. In fact, he went to the Kenyan court and obtained orders to block his extradition. But suddenly, he decided that protection is not sufficient. It's not even necessary. I will fly myself at my personal cost to the Netherlands and turn myself into the Dutch authorities.
How often do you see that happening?
This is why it is particularly puzzling, as you have said, because unless he thought that with the changeover of power at the prosecutor's seat, that there would be something that they would be able to overlook, that there would be some kind of evidence then that was, because you remember during the 5 years, the prosecutor had changed twice that we are looking at now. Between the 5 years and the time we had gone from Ocampo to Bensouda and then to now Khan, right?
No, actually, it's just been Bensouda.
At the time, between those 5 years,
yeah.
So I'm saying by the time all of these cases had started, so we're looking at the third prosecutor from the very beginning of 2007
right.
until now, right? So could it be that the words that he heard Bensouda say at some point when she had mentioned things like lack of evidence, that this then now applied to, or lack of witnesses wanting to come forward anymore, so they had to then dispose of cases, kind of? Could it have made some kind of sense in his head that, all right, even if I turn myself in, there would be nothing that they would have to hold me by the short and curlies? Really?
I'm sorry, but we first of all must put this in context, which is that Paul Gicheru is a fairly seasoned lawyer.
So exactly,
he's not a layman like me and you. He's a lawyer. He understands law. He understands court processes.
So why
and he knows. So by the time he is taking this risk, my assumption would be that he actually knows the consequences and he knows how it's going to turn out. And so we must wonder what's at play.
Secondly, if you want to consider, for instance, a seasoned lawyer, a man who understands how the game is played, he knows the lay of the land well, of what benefit would this be to him? Because you cannot say that he has offered himself to be a sacrificial lamb in a situation such as this one. Somebody whose name has been associated with what we know happened in 2008. This isn't your average Kenyan ID carrying citizen. No. This is someone who has been involved in things that most of us can't even begin to contemplate.
True.
So for them to take themselves, the question that I asked, and I'm in agreement with you, what puzzled me was, what understanding did he arrive at with whoever he needed to arrive at with these understandings for him to take this step? And what else was discussed with the Hague? Because this thing, in my mind, it looks choreographed. That's my view. What do you think?
This thing up until what point? It could have been choreographed until the point at which he presented himself at The Hague, and then things seem to hurtle in the opposite direction. Like, all right, if you go and...
But is it hurtling in the opposite direction, really?
Do you think the fellow is enjoying this case the way it is right now, where people are calling his name and the name of his boss?
He does not look distressed.
You think
I saw him.
Tell us about
I saw
that.
him in court yesterday. He doesn't look distressed. He seemed very calm.
You think things are playing out in the way in which they thought they would?
I think so, because if he actually was afraid of The Hague, which the three of them were, the three of them who were under arrest warrants for witness interference, they were really, really scared of The Hague. They didn't want to go to The Hague. They used the Kenyan court system, succeeded, prevented the Attorney General and the Minister for Interior from extraditing them. Now, he has somehow overcome that fear. So it must be on, as City says, there must be an understanding. There must be an understanding
between
that
who
whatever
and
pain that is going to accrue from the ICC is something he can live with.
Kwam, you're saying something that could shed light and almost talk about the compromise of the court. That could lead to that, and understand. And that's why I'm asking. And that's why I'm asking.
I wouldn't go that
I'm asking
far.
the question.
Yes.
Understanding between who and whom on this other side. Like, just go present yourself. Whatever happens, we'll find a way to take care of you. What exactly are we taking? What are we saying here? Make it plain as day.
Our own judicial system allows for negotiation.
That's what I'm asking.
So
Understanding between who and whom.
I'll bore you with some background detail.
Please bore us.
The Kenya government was a big player in the ICC cases, and intelligence was a big player in the ICC cases. So it had an active and ongoing interest right from the get-go. From the gathering of evidence, you remember police officers and senior police officers being prevented by court order from, swearing affidavits for the Hague. So the Kenya government knows what case is available at the Hague, and it instrumentalizes that process when it suits it. Right? It instrumentalizes that process. The court, I think, operates, in the traditional sense, and which is why sometimes I'm a bit hesitant about those things, because the court operates like it's operating in a clean, sterile environment.
Right.
Unfortunately, all of us are doing things to influence how that's going to play out. So the court is sitting there saying, we are blind. Lady Justice is blind. She's blindfolded. And we're just sitting here and waiting for the cases to be brought. Other people are planning how this can be an important staging post for making political statements.
Right.
Or for making other statements of guilt or innocence.
If I may contribute a little history as well. See, being Kenyan often places upon you a very heavy burden of history. Whenever there have been incidents in this country that we've considered bizarre and puzzling and tragic, like the death of one Dr. Robert Okoh, the matter went to court. Something very similar to what happened with the witnesses in this case that went to the Hague happened. People just started dying off.
Falling off the face of the earth.
No known epidemic was taking place at that particular point in time.
There was no COVID then.
There was nothing you could attribute it to. But somehow, that driver, the bodyguard, people who could have actually lent, information, they all died. So that the case, no matter what you did with it, simply couldn't stand. So now when you have something like the case in The Hague, and then again, the same condition, the same situation, sort of like replays itself, you suddenly say, no. There's nothing natural about this. This is contrived. This is something that has been stage managed. And unfortunately, there's something about the truth. Inconvenient as it usually is, it will always out. Because when things are planned, the word planned, it has to be beyond you. If it is me, then I am just configuring it. The moment I use the word plan, I could plan it in my mind, but I'm involved others. Now, the moment others are involved, then the statute of limitation on the secrecy of it depends very much on one simple thing, that we continue getting along.
Okay. If, Kwam, Chetty, you were going to spell it out, for the people who are sitting and watching this thing and talking about the significance that this case then bears for the country and for other names that have been mentioned. I mean, we're looking at the testimony that we've heard from the numbered witnesses over the last couple of days, and the big man has been mentioned. Gicheru himself having been mentioned, saying, here you are, 1.6 million shilling was the running cost. That was the minimum. 1.4 is how much, we could buy your testimony for. What significance would it bear if Gicheru, for example, is convicted? 1. 2, how or whom would it benefit if he has been sent, or rather is being tried right now, and would he be covering for the multitude of sins of somebody else and then allowed to be the sacrificial lamb? What are we looking at here? If we're to bare knuckle say it as it is.
I'll take you a little back, and I would start at this point of saying, one is that there is an epidemic of impunity in this country. And that impunity, we exported it to The Hague. So the trial of Paul Gicheru, and whatever the outcome, the trial of Paul Gicheru is very significant for this country, because it says, one, as City was saying, the truth doesn't die. You can kill the witnesses, the truth doesn't die. So it's a very significant thing that we are revisiting this. The consequences notwithstanding that, you can't interfere in a truth-telling process. And that's really what that trial was supposed to be. We don't know if the people who are charged were guilty or not. And the only reason we don't know is because the witnesses either died or were intimidated or disappeared or something happened to them. And that is a very, very grave thing, because what it does is that it creates a culture of silence and fear. And we are trying to rise above that culture of silence and fear and impunity, saying if somebody has done something, people should be able to speak up about it. So the trial of Paul Gicheru, I think, is significant in that respect. We will look at the political end of it, which is that this means something for one political player or another. But for me, I look at it in terms of the culture of the country. And as Siti was saying earlier, we have a culture of disappearing witnesses. Witnesses have been disappeared from the time of Pio Gama Pinto's assassination, Tom Joseph Mboya, Agwins Godek, J.M. Kariuki, Robert Ouko. We disappear witnesses.
Did you ever find Kou Karumba?
No. Disappeared in Uganda. Yes. Right? And it's this is an important step for this country. I think Kenya needs to take a lesson from this thing of you can't kill your witnesses. You can't. We have a whole whistleblower protection law, and we also we have a certain casualness around it, I think, which needs to stop. But to your second question about the consequences. My view is that we can be dramatic about it, but I suspect that we might also not be dramatic about it. Because the person this really hurts, in the moral economy is Dr. William Ruto, because he's the beneficiary. If actually what they're accusing Gicheru of happened, he's the beneficiary of that, which the judges said there were intolerable levels of witness interference. That's the reason for terminating his case. So he's the beneficiary of that. However, William Ruto, I think, does not have capacity for shame or embarrassment.
Well, okay.
Yeah? So just because of that, because he's a gentleman who had no problem discrediting victims. Discrediting victims. You can imagine somebody denying your pain and your suffering. At some point when I was making a bad documentary, I remember visiting Kiambaa. And Kiambaa up to today,
in Kiambu or Kiambaa?
No, Kiambaa in Wasingishu, in Eldoret. And Kiambaa, to date, the site of the church is walled with a perimeter fence. Is walled, but there's nothing on the spot. And the reason there's nothing on the spot is because the memorialization of the signature image of the post-election violence, just the burning of the church, has been denied. It continues to be publicly denied and put under the carpet. And it's a thing that, I don't know if it's the community or the leadership, they are not ready to address. So although we agree, yes, there are over 30 souls who are lost in that church, the memorialization is problematic. It's problematic. There are people who've come forward, they provided resources to say, let's build a monument, even just a very simple memorial saying something happened here.
Has not been done.
They can't do it.
Let's take a break at this point. We're talking with journalists for Kwamchetsi Mahoka today, and we're looking at this Gicheru case at The Hague, what it means for Kenya, the significance of it. We'll come back and continue with the conversation after we take a look at weather and traffic. It's 7:30 on the nose. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
I like listening to you guys. You're the default radio station in my car in the morning. Even the children listen to you guys.
I agree Parliament has failed this country. And I will say it again. We have not done what we should have done.
We know in this country, the Kenya prison sector is one of the most underfunded sector.
The way it is being done and the way we're calling it Huduma Namba the Msema Kweli is because all records will be there. There are people who are now billionaires with no history as to how they got all these assets.
Yes.
Anything that the president does that is not in accord with the constitution is an illegal act. He shouldn't be doing it and should be sitting here and trying to sort of guise it up.
I totally believe live transmission of results and allowing Kenyans to be able to view all these results. I believe that it will be impossible to steal elections.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Okay, 18 degrees and mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi. 24 will be the high today, lows of 16. At 16 degrees, it's cloudy in Nakuru, highs of 27 and lows of 15. 13 will be the low in a cloudy Nyeri, highs of 27. 24 will be the high in Eldoret, where it's sunny at 14. It'll come down to lows of 13. Partly sunny in Mombasa at 26, highs of 33. And in Malindi, it's partly sunny at 27. We'll see highs of 31 and lows of 26. Kisumu is cloudy at 20. It'll go to highs of 28 today and lows of 19. While in Kakamega, cloudy at 16, highs of 29 and lows of 15. Out in Kampala, it's cloudy at 20, highs of 27 and lows of 19. While in Dar es Salaam, cloudy conditions at 28, highs of 33 and lows of 27. We're looking at sunny conditions at 18 in Johannesburg, highs of 28 and lows of 14, while it's clear in Lagos at 26. 34 will be the high and lows of 26. It's raining in Kinshasa at 23. That'll be today's low and it'll go to highs of 30.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever.
Continues in major parts of the city today. We're looking at some craziness going on Mombasa Road today, right around that Imara Daima stretch. In and outbound traffic continues to be a thing right now. Let's look at Langata Road, where that continues as well. And it's going towards Raila Odinga Way, which is slowly piling up all the way to the roundabout at Ngong Road. Then going out towards Community, some traffic there. All right, let's look as well at Uhuru Highway. And that is going to slow folks down considerably. If you have an option, please use it. And some of those are the bypasses getting out of that mess that will definitely be Uhuru Highway for the next couple of hours. All right, Ring Road Western started really packed this morning and it still is that thing. Limuru Road coming onto Wangari Maathai Road, and we're looking at Jogo Road as we look at the eastern part of the city. It still continues on the Thika Superhighway today. Hot and heavy bumper-to-bumper traffic for kilometers is what we're looking at today, as well as Kiambu Road. I don't even know how many lanes we are at now, but this one is going to need some patience, guys. Okay. Where shall we meet? Let's meet. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127. We're trying to keep things moving. If it gets crazy, talk to us. Don't suffer alone.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice.
25 minutes to 8 o'clock in the studio this morning, and we're having our conversation. CT Muga Ndu Okoh, and joining us journalist Kwamchetsi Makoha, and we're looking at this Paul Gicheru case at the ICC this morning, asking ourselves questions about, what's going on, looking at the facts and saying, why are things happening at the speed at which they are? Kwamchetsi, before we went to the break, just looking at some of the things that you had mentioned, talking about moral responsibility that is had, remembering those who suffered. One of the things that we saw early last week at the Hague was that there was the request by the prosecution that there would be compelling of witnesses to give their testimony. Why do you think that was insisted on in the manner in which it was, that it was quite heavy? That say, before it was an invitation to come and give your testimony, but now there was the compelling that was what was requested. Why do you think that was?
Fortunately, unfortunately, I think the guys who did the witness interference were I think they were careless. They were careless, they were sloppy, and they got caught. So far, when you even begin looking at the evidence they have, the recordings of the conversations that they had, and they've sort of gone through this and verified, it's pretty damning. Yeah, it's pretty damning, and they basically do have evidence that, places certain individuals at the crime scene.
The unintended consequences of impunity. Because when people are careless, it's often with an understanding that
nothing will happen to them.
Precisely. So they don't really care. They don't cover their tracks.
Plus, before that, with the previous prosecutions, had we not seen that there were certain witnesses who then did either recant their testimony or just decline to appear?
That really is the nub. I think that's the nub of the Gicheru case. That, the prosecutor went into this, for lack of a better word, rather naively, expecting, that this is going to run as a judicial process. She was handed a political card, and she was just unable to deal. By the time they were trying to save this case, the Ruto Sang case. We must not also look at this in isolation. We must, I think, be brave enough to say the witness interference, intimidation, resulting in withdrawal or death of witnesses affected both the Kenyatta case and the Ruto case. Yeah, so I don't think that we can paint black and white here. We must be honest enough to say that witness interference happened for both cases. For the Ruto one, it probably was egregious and took, it was careless. It was careless enough for them to be caught.
You know what is strange when you think about it? The question that you want to ask is, why scare witnesses and why treat this whole case, why embedded in so much fear and secrecy? It's because all you're doing is you're stemming the tide of people who might want to come forward as witnesses.
City, I'll go a step further.
Yes.
I would actually say, if you are innocent and there's nothing you have done, why would you be afraid of people coming to speak about that event? So we can only surmise, we can only conclude that it is out of guilt. Yeah, it's out of guilt that you would interfere with witnesses. Because if you really were not involved in a crime, you didn't do anything wrong, why would you be so worried that you actually set up a whole plan? They are calling it the common plan.
Yeah.
They set up a whole plan to identify witnesses. They hunted them down. They looked for them outside this jurisdiction. They found them. They either bought them or they intimidated them. And you must wonder. You must then wonder if the charges that were terminated, therefore, were groundless, were as groundless as we've been made to believe. For me, this opens the Pandora's box about the post-election violence of 2007, 2008.
And what does it open to?
It says that our political leaders on both sides are culpable. Yeah, it says that our political leaders did something criminal. Yeah, we may not have the bullets. Yeah? We may not have the filings, but at least we have the smoke and we have the report of the gun.
What does this mean? I mean, just before we went to the break, you had alluded about then the political responsibility or accountability. On this side of the pond, if things are being choreographed here, what does it spell out? On this side, saying what can or cannot be done should Gicheru's trial come to an end, and what if he is convicted? What does that mean?
I haven't looked at the law, but I suspect that crimes against the administration of justice will probably earn him about 2 to 3 years, with time already served and remission. He might probably just be home. He might be home next year or the year after if they conclude. And this is a single trial. It's not a complicated case. It's before one judge.
But in your opinion, also, would this sort of case be the sort of case that offers sufficient grounds for reopening of the case, so that other details that they had tried to look at but were not able to because of the circumstances that we're describing, would it lend itself to such an eventuality?
I think there's a remote possibility, but I think there are three political considerations. The first is you must look at who is in the office of the prosecutor. And the guy who is in the office of the prosecutor right now, the Honorable Karim Khan, Queen's Counsel, was also Dr. William Ruto's lawyer.
Yes.
So he has so far had to recuse himself from this prosecution. So that's one. I don't know if there's appetite to prosecute the Kenyan cases at the ICC. Two, the ICC cases, the Kenya cases at the ICC were very costly to that institution because of the campaign that Kenya waged at the international level, both at the UN and the African Union. They were extremely politically costly. I have friends in there, and they spoke to me and they said, "You Kenyans are just a pain in all the wrong places." They don't want a repeat. Yeah, the ICC, I think the ICC doesn't want a repeat because what Kenya did to that court damaged it. Yeah.
How? Can you give an explanation? I mean, what? How?
One is just the discrediting. Kenya went to the UN General Assembly, said, please have these cases deferred. They went to the African Union and they intimidated the court and said, all our members, and Africa has the highest number of signatories to the Rome Statute, the 34. They said, we are actually going to pull out. And some actually did pull out. I think I remember Burundi pulled out. So it was just very, very costly. It created a very negative energy. And that has had an impact on the functioning of the court in terms of it weakened its moral voice. And that's something, if you are the leader of that court, if you're the prosecutor of that court, you really, really don't want to go down that rabbit hole anymore.
I would have thought that would have strengthened it because,
indeed,
I mean, we're saying essentially that other cases that have come before the court, they have never witnessed such pushback.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so such pushback ought to tell you this may not be the only country that's going to push back. We may have other cases.
Precisely. Duterte in Philippines has also done a pull-out, and he's supposed to be, he's a suspect. It's just one of the things. I think if you wanted to be an optimist, you would say that Kenya's aggression has actually grown the stature of the international criminal justice. Yes, it has.
That is what I was looking at. Because, you see, in all honesty, everything that went on at The Hague and everything that's still going on at The Hague, it's instructive. One hears of the International Criminal Court, but the functioning, the workings are always vague at best. But when there's a case that involves your country, you now have a front row seat. Because you can actually see the goings on, and as a Kenyan, the things you look at and you say, why don't they see what is happening here? Because you know what is happening, and you wonder, did they think it was going to be a walk in the park? This is a question I'm asking. What did they think? You're accusing two people who at some point become the president, the deputy of the. What do you think is going to happen? Think about it. These are Kenyans. No, let's start with that. Right? These Africans, these are Kenyans.
Okay.
What do you think they're going to do?
We'll take a quick break at 7:45. We're having a conversation about what is happening at the ICC at The Hague today with the Paul Gicheru case, what it means for Kenya, how significant it is in terms of the outcomes. We'll come back and then look a little bit more about witness tampering and protection and what it could mean in the future for any cases or even in the present for what's happening currently. It's Kenya's biggest conversation at 7:45.
87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
At 14 minutes to 8:00 in the studio this morning, CT Muga Ndu Okoh and journalist Kwamchetsi Makoha, and we're looking at this Paul Gicheru case, the ICC case, The Hague. The bigger picture, I think, is extremely important here, Kwamchetsi. I think there have been a lot of political statements. There have been a lot of political innuendo about what could be happening here. But what is something that we ought not to run away from in terms of where we should be focusing? Because many things have been said. Just looking at the things that have been said from the trial, from the court in the last 1 week, witness tampering, fear that is coming from witnesses that have disappeared over the last 5 years, people who had testimony to give, people who even received money and then were ready to come out and say, we received the money, but here we don't want it anymore. We want to tell the truth about what happened. And then they're not there tomorrow. Witness protection, which was supposed to be a thing from the ICC, that then still had people disappearing. Witness tampering. I mean, it's foreboding on anything that would come in the future, that there would be a case whereby Kenyans had information about something that could either lead to the recovery of funds, justice for life. But looking at something like this would say, absolutely not. I will not then help in any way, shape, or form. I will not give my testimony because I could be disappeared tomorrow. My family would be without me. I mean, what does that say about the state of things as we see it today?
I go back to your earlier question, which is, what is this really about? The hard facts, which are undisputed, 1,133 people were killed. 2007, 2008. 950 women were sexually violated. 600,000 people were rusticated from their homes. Those are the facts. Now, we can dress this up in political clothes and say we are trying to finish people one way or the other, but really that is the basis. We can't forget that. It's a long time ago, yes, but the wounds from 2007 and 2008, I meet many of those victims today. The wounds have not healed. They will not heal.
You see, at the end of the day, sir, one of the things that discussing a case such as this one does, it obscures the lines of the actual happenings that eventually led to The Hague. The Hague didn't happen on its own. Something happened that brought the cases of our president and his deputy to The Hague. And the end result of what happened was people died.
True.
1,100. People were displaced. Many of them still displaced.
True.
Many of them can't even go back to their land because to date, they still fear for their lives. To date.
Yeah.
So when one talks about the issues of The Hague, to me what is pertinent is why it is the issues that brought about this situation are not being faced head on. If anything, it's like we look for every which way to divert our attentions from it and talk about everything else other than what it is. Because it's like we want to quickly forget that people died, want to quickly forget that people were displaced, want to quickly forget that the reason why these two individuals went to The Hague was because of what happened.
That's true. And there's also now another thing now thinking about this, and I probably had about 10 years to think about this. There is also a burden of guilt. And that burden of guilt, collective guilt especially, is what enables us to excuse the people who are accused. Because when we look at post-election violence and we all examine ourselves carefully and individually, you will find that a very large number of people actually took part in that violence. And so they are able to identify, they are able to empathize with those people who have been put in the dock and saying, actually, no, if you are charging them, it could also come to me. We have to be able to have a conversation that separates and says, these are the ones responsible. Yeah, they are responsible for the biggest portion of the violence. That yes, we acknowledge that you are also guilty, and create opportunities for you to speak about it and to purge your guilt. But Kenyans like to collapse their own guilt, and a lot of people did bad things in that period. Yeah, either speech or action. A lot of people did bad things, and nothing has happened to them. And so the reason why we avoid this conversation about PEV is because a lot of us fear that when justice comes, it could be knocking on your door.
There's the conversation that takes place in hushed voices about the many young men who supposedly were killed in the Rift Valley and buried in mass graves. It's a conversation that if you hear whispers of, it disappears quicker than it appeared. You see, it follows a trajectory of how we deal with tragic events in this country. Something that ought to be faced, ought to be acknowledged for what it is. If there's reconciliation, if there's compensation, whatever needs to be done is done, but it's out in the open. Because if that doesn't happen, then the lingering problem is that we stand a chance of seeing a repetition of the same thing. Because it's like it's always torturing. It's never really far from the surface.
If you were to cast your eye into the near future, however near that would be, with the conclusion of this case, which from all indications is not going to be too long from now, the way things have started and the way we see things going, what does it mean for Kenya as a country, regardless of the outcome, whether he is found guilty and then convicted or otherwise let go? What is it, these two scenarios, what picture does it paint for Kenya?
One is that interfering in the administration of justice is not on. But you see, that lesson will only land if Kenya also releases the other two suspects. There are two other people who are wanted at the ICC on the same witness interference case, the Ruto Sang case. So if Kenya actually wanted to learn a lesson from this, is actually to finish with that whole chapter and say there are people who are wanted with witness interference, subject them to legal process, find them guilty or not guilty, and then, let's close that chapter. There's an element of duplicity with the Kenya government with regard to these cases, and I think that duplicity needs to be laid bare so that, we are able to deal with this once and for all. The second thing is also just the value that this society wants to place on whistleblower protection, witness protection. We have laws for that, but everybody knows that, if you take that path of blowing the whistle, you are calling attention upon yourself, and you are calling for consequences that sometimes you might not be able. Our stories of whistleblowers are not redeeming. Yeah, all our episodes about how we've dealt with whistleblowers, from as high as John Githongo to David Munyakei at the Central Bank, they are not redeeming. Yeah, they are not the best. That's not the best version of ourselves.
Neither is it encouraging for anybody who wants to come forward and say, look, I have information that would actually help. I mean, it seems like almost an obvious answer, but then what should the situation be whereby you have members of the society, citizens of the country, who are concerned about what's happening, whether we're talking about criminal activity, loss of funds, loss of life, etc., etc. What should the situation be when we're saying you're going to the highest court for criminal activity in the world, or you're going to an apex court here in the country?
What my brother has just said gets to the heart of the matter. This country is a criminal enterprise. This country. Okay? What do you think we always talk and read about? Now, China, who understand these things, anytime you steal from state coffers, it's considered a crime against humanity. They shoot you. Okay?
No questions
Meaning they want to make
asked.
sure you are... There's no... Finished, done with. Now, how do you explain a situation where people are always involved? They may think it's a little corruption, but it's a corruption. Now, when you mention the Hague to such a person, they know the wrong they have done. And the unfortunate thing is that many of us are in that shoe. So anything that shines a bright light on justice is not something you want to be at the periphery. You want to deal with just enough of it, but not too much of it. So when it comes to actually seeking justice, look at the pelting and look at the force of interference that even our judicial system even currently has. They do what they're supposed to do. Do you think people sit back and say, well, this is what they've done? No. It is fought at every turn. Now, it's good for our system in that we are maturing, but it also tells you about our underbelly.
No, and we politicize now. We politicize our impunity. We go into politics to create protection for our impunity. And we allow these conversations to be conflated, to be collapsed together so that, criminal guilt is politicized, and then, we instrumentalize it and say, we are being targeted as a community or being targeted as a gender or something else, but it's actually just criminal activity. Yeah.
It doesn't matter who is perpetrating.
No.
It's criminal activity.
If it's criminal activity, we separate criminal activity from politics, because politics is about sorting out our lives, sorting out our priorities.
On a final note, Kwamchetsi, who then is supposed to be the vanguard of this belief? Who then is supposed to say, you know what, folks, we cannot continue to operate like this. Things have got to take a switch.
It's got to be the citizen, because really, look at Kenya's constitution. Kenya's constitution says we must invest in the citizen, who is the sovereign. We have hijacked that sovereign power. We've hidden it in State House. We've hidden it in Parliament. We've hidden it in other places. But really, it has got to be the citizen who says, this is not where I want to raise my children. This is not what I want my children to be. This is not who I want to be. This is not what I want my neighborhood to be. This is not what I want my county to be. This is not what I want my country to be. Once the citizens make that decision, the rest becomes fairly easy. And you know what? We actually have a moment. There was a moment there in 2003 at the beginning, after the election of NAC, when citizens actually realized that, no, they were just being intimidated into giving bribes. And they started arresting police officers and saying, no, you are not going to extort us. So that conscience is there. It just needs to be awakened and the opportunity to exercise it.
Kwamchetsi, always a pleasure to have you here, talking about these very, very important things and seeing how things will progress over the next couple of weeks. It would be great to have you back to open it up a little bit more. Asante.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. A few minutes to 8 o'clock. Conversations continue here in the Situation Room. Let's take a moment, however, to remind you about making the internet a safe place for children. The Communications Authority remembering from the 8th of February how we can make the internet a safe place. We're reminding you that we're dedicated to helping work together for a better internet. Cyber Soldiers was launched. It's a brand new interactive game on how to teach kids to recognize threats and vulnerabilities online. So what are some of the best safety tips you know or you've heard from playing Cyber Soldiers? Remember, you can play this on your phone or on your tablet. We want to hear about your experience online dealing with cyber safety for you and your family. And so we're going to share some cyber safety tips courtesy of CA in the coming hours. And we'd like to hear from you as well. www.ca.go.ke/child protection so that you can know what concerns your child's safety while on the internet. Coming in after 8 o'clock, we will be with Barack Muluka here in the studio, and we'll look at the lay of the land in Luyaland. Hopefully, we'll be able to understand a little bit better about what this critical area of the country has when it comes to politics and bringing things together. That'll be after 8 o'clock on KTN Home as well. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, coming around to 8 o'clock, wherever it is that you tuned in from around the country and indeed around the world on our live stream. Let's listen to the news right now. It's 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to lead the much-anticipated Sagana 3 meeting tomorrow at the Nyeri State Lodge. Central Kenyan leaders allied to the Jubilee Party have welcomed the president's plan to support the Azimio la Umoja movement. The meeting is expected to bring together 30,000 people from across all sectors from Mount Kenya region, including governors, members of parliament, members of the county assemblies, top business people, among others. Ahead of the forum, Jubilee leaders in central Kenya have rallied their supporters to be behind the president's agenda, which includes his succession plan that is likely to dominate the meeting. And Orange Democratic Party leader Raila Odinga has downplayed claims by the Kenya Kwanza Alliance on the ballooning public debt. in an attack to Deputy President William Ruto, who is also part of the Kenya Kwanza Alliance. Raila said the DP should take responsibility of the increased debt since he has been in government. According to Raila, every country has a public debt and Kenya is no exception. He said his government has a well-articulated plan to seal corruption loopholes, saying the vice has highly contributed to increased debt. Raila was speaking in Lunga Kwale County, where he led the Azimio la Umoja movement campaigns for the second day in the coastal region. And Narok Senator Ledama Olekin has hit out at the Kenya Kwanza Alliance over claims that the National Treasury is set to approve a new debt ceiling. He said the alliance does not offer any solid solutions to the country's major challenges and is only focused on causing division among Kenyans by use of unsubstantiated claims. At the same time, Olekina urged Kwale residents to rally behind ODM leader Raila Odinga's presidential bid, saying he is best suited to bring the much-needed change in the country. Meanwhile, Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka denied claims that they held a meeting with ODM leader Raila Odinga over a possible coalition deal. Speaking in Kwale, Kalonzo, who led the One Kenya Alliance Brigade campaigns in the region, said his meeting with Raila at Tamarind Hotel was coincidental, which resulted in greetings but nothing beyond niceties. Kalonzo, who was accompanied by his co-principal KANU leader Gideon Moi, said he cannot be forced into a hurried deal because he has been betrayed enough to trust again. And Deputy President William Ruto will officially be endorsed as the United Democratic Alliance presidential flag bearer on March 15th. The party's Secretary General Veronica Maina announced in a notice that the National Delegates Convention, which will be held at the Kasarani Indoor Arena, will, among other issues, nominate the presidential flag bearer. Ruto is the sole presidential contender to declare presidential candidature in UDA party. The Deputy President's endorsement will mark his decamping from the Jubilee Party to the newly formed UDA Party in the 2022 general elections. Already, he is expected to be shown the door during Jubilee's NDC on February 25th and 26th following his association with the UDA. And former Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission Chief Executive Officer Halake Wako has officially launched his campaigns for the Isiolo gubernatorial seat, challenging incumbent Governor Mohamed Kuti and former Governor Godana Doyo in what promises to be a grueling contest. Speaking at Mulata area in the outskirts of Isiolo town, where he officially launched his campaigns, Wako, who is vying on an Orange Democratic Movement ticket, said that having served in various government and non-governmental positions for close to 30 years, he has acquired a wealth of experience and feels he is the right candidate to steer the county to another greater level. He recently resigned as university's fund board chair to vie for the seat. On a sad note, the family of missing journalist Bogonko Bosire has been plunged into mourning for a second time in months after Bogonko's father, 72-year-old David Bosire, passed on. Family members say David Bosire has been ailing since his son Bogonko, who was the family breadwinner, mysteriously disappeared 8 years ago without a trace. The death of David Bosire comes barely a month since Bogonko's brother Joshua Bosire died on January 14th by suicide. The family says Joshua's predicament began when he was tasked to take care of his ailing father against his wishes. Bogonko, a renowned journalist and owner of the defunct Jackal News blog, went missing in 2013. 80 years later, they cling on to hope that their son is alive. And police in Kakamega have impounded 12 vehicles that were flouting traffic rules along the Kakamega-Kisumu highway. County Commissioner John Ondengo said police working with the National Transport and Safety Authority also netted 15 motorbikes and 7 tuk-tuks during the crackdown. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, at a few minutes after 8 o'clock. What are we looking at on the roads today? Quite some on the Thika Superhighway, and that has been hot and heavy at least for the last hour. And we're looking at it go all the way beyond Zimmerman and then coming out towards the Pangani underpass. Some kilometers of traffic today. You're going to have to be able to stick through this one. Keep your wits about because you're going to need it, because as you get into the CBD, things are actually quite packed. And it doesn't stop, because if you're going from the CBD going towards Westlands, if you're going then towards Ngong Road, if you're coming out towards Mombasa Road, traffic does continue in most of these areas. Raila Odinga Way is taking a beating this morning, and it's taking off a lot of the traffic that's coming off Langata Road. Gong Road also joining with that, going out towards Community. Uhuru Highway through and through into the CBD, out towards Westlands. That doesn't look fun at all. Waiyaki Way is also doing that thing this morning, coming off James Gicheru, coming out from Kangemi. And we're looking at the whole State House area with some traffic. Are we even at Wednesday? Not yet, but it looks like traffic is going to do the rounds on us today. Okay, so if you find a good route, or if you might be stuck somewhere, share the information. If it's bad, share. If it's good, share. Somebody might be able to help. Do that. SpiceFM KE on Twitter or text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Indeed, the only way to start your day at 7 minutes after 8 o'clock. You're tuned into Kenya's biggest conversation on Tuesday, the 22nd of the second month of the year 2022. It'll be fun times at 2:22 this afternoon. Big up to those who will be telling us the time and the date at the same time. All right. A special welcome to our audience on KT and Home this morning. Thanks for joining us. And as we continue with conversations around the country and around the world, wherever you're tuned in from, Karibuni Sana, Ndu Okoh and CT Muga in the studio with you today. And before we welcome our very special guest this morning, let's hear today's proverb.
An old cat will not learn to dance. It's a Moroccan proverb.
An old cat will not learn to dance. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. No, n'est-ce pas?
Well, the Moroccans prefer to use
the Moroccans prefer cats
of a cat as opposed to a dog.
Okay. In terms of its stealth and ability, perhaps that's something that they're looking at.
But also, countries that subscribe to the Islamic faith, a dog isn't a preferred creature that they consider affectionately. Yes. So a cat is easy to deal with.
Okay. Speaking of stealth and ability, our guest in the studio this morning is Strategic Communications Advisor, Dr. Barak Maluka. Barak, good morning.
Morning, Ndu.
How are you?
I'm wonderful, as usual. You know, I've come from the village, in Manyudia, and I bring greetings. In Manyudia, we say you don't teach grandmother to suck eggs.
You don't teach a grandmother to suck eggs?
Or you don't suckle grandmother.
Right.
And today I'm wearing a hat. I don't know which one. You will define it for me.
Okie doke. That it's a hat is a good thing. And I think we can start off there. Welcome to the Situation Room. It's always good to have you here when you are. You made the move to the village. It's interesting that you have. Why?
Nairobi shocks me. Nairobi chokes me. It's not the Nairobi that I grew up in. I grew up in Nairobi. I went to school in Nairobi. I went to university in Nairobi. I've worked in Nairobi all my life. My children were born in Nairobi. My grandchildren have been born in Nairobi. But it chokes me. It's choking and shocking. And if you want to enjoy a salubrious old age and age gracefully, and to watch the sun go down, and to watch your grandchildren grow, and get out of this place.
Many folks would say it's not just Nairobi. People are feeling choked by the country currently, Barak.
The country is choking but certain outlays are less choking than others. It's like hell. My grandmother used to say that even in hell, you need somebody you know, a relative, a friend. Should you have the mischance of ending up there, they may tell you, move from where you are sitting, come to this corner here. It burns in a slightly more friendly manner. So the country is choking. Some places less so than others more so than the rest. And Nairobi is in the lead.
Why use the adjective choking? What is it about it that you feel? Because when someone thinks of choking, it's either something is stuck in your throat and is preventing you from breathing, or somebody has their hands wrapped around your neck and they are slowly squeezing the air out of your body.
Yes, I think you interpret it as an adjective, perhaps correctly so. It's a descriptor, but I use it as a verb. What it's doing to me, it chokes. It chokes, it throttles. Yes. It gets the air out of your lungs in its various manifestations. It's too rapid, it is too hostile, it is actually gotten to that level where some big towns or big human settlements that we call towns and or cities, without having the characteristics that define cities, due to those who are unfortunate to be dwelling in those places. Cities are organized metropolises where life is ordered, transport is predictable, water flows and availabilities are predictable, security is assured, lighting is there, and you breathe fresh air because of the boulevards that are clearly put in place by city authorities. You don't have any of that here. You have gangsters who have, in fact, taken charge of everything from City Hall to everywhere else. You have these cartels that have taken charge of water supplies, and they have got godfathers and baron protectors in places of authority with their water bowsers.
My goodness.
And so on, and you dare call it a city.
Barack, one might think that you don't enjoy your experience in the city.
I think the point he's making is a valid one. You see, there's one thing to endure what you're going through. There's another to look at it in the clear light of day. What do we have here? Remember, my view is that this country, the country and the rulership, we're a criminal enterprise. That is my view.
You mentioned having a hand to hold even if you were in hell. And maybe that segues into what we are discussing today. Because we're looking at a particular region in the country, a group of people who many have described as not coming together either to decide on something politically or being the group that will swing a particular vote in one direction. Coming out of Western Kenya, the Luhya community. Now, many would ask, why have a tribal conversation? Because I think we just have to demarcate from the very beginning that there's not necessarily anything wrong with it, as CT always says. But that it would seem as though that label has been, up until now, that within this community, that there are so many different factions who've not been able to come together and decide. And that many times, had they been able to do that, we would see different political dispensations if they did. What's your overview or your outlook on this particular lay of the land in Luhya land?
Thank you. It's actually a very interesting perspective. It belongs to a specific tradition, a specific meta-narrative, if we may put it that way, that we have been given a certain way of interpreting our reality, particularly the reality in Western Kenya, and that it is a reality or an effort that attempts to blindside whatever is going on elsewhere in the country and to attempt to look at it as if it could be discussed, understood, and eventually executed in isolation. And I think we have that tendency in this country, some kind of purposeful blindness, purposeful forgetfulness, some kind of purposeful amnesia that makes us look at things in a certain isolated context, and without recognizing that similar activities go on in other parts of the country, indeed other parts of the world. What is happening in Western Kenya is not any different from what is going on, say, in Ukambani, where you have Kalonzo Musyoka in one place, and you have Charity Ngilu, Alfred Muthui, and Professor Kivuda Kibwana in another docket. Until quite recently, in fact, Ngilu was pacing a path of her own. Muthui was on his own, and Kibwana was on another path, and Kalonzo elsewhere. And the exigencies of the times have changed that pattern a little bit, yet that reality still obtains. We have seen, and we are seeing a lot of the same in the Mount Kenya region. It has been there in the past. It is there today. It was there in the past when Ken Matiba and Mwai Kibaki were running against one another, two political giants and heavyweights. It was there in the days of Jomo Kenyatta when it was said that the presidential motorcade would not traverse certain geographical landscapes and spaces. It is still there today in the days of Uhuru Kenyatta. In fact, I gather that he's going to hold a council in the mountain in the next few days to attempt to bring the mountain together. It has been there in Luoland in the days of Tom Mboya, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, in the days of President Daniel Arap Moi, when we had the KANU loyalists and those who are not capable of towing the straight and narrow path in Luoland. It's been there at the coast. It's been there in Turkana. It's there everywhere.
So you're saying there is nothing,
the country.
So there's nothing special or specific
capacity that we have to create meta-narratives and pin them in certain places, certain parts of the country, and say that this is how to define this particular community. And I've always wondered about the sources of the sinister energies that must drive those kinds of narratives, because this happens everywhere in the country.
Okay, if we're looking at the second most populous people in the country, right? By tribe, second most populous, right? Arguably. And if you look at the first, it would appear that, you know, even with the last election, that they were able to rally around one of their own and say, okay, we are making this decision, we are going in this direction. The narrative has come from that the second most populous has not been able to rally around one person and say, okay, guys, from our backyard, this is whom we have chosen. We're throwing our support behind them. Let's move in this direction. It has always seemed to have been divided. Are you saying this is not a big deal? It's just not something that we should even be considering because it happens in other places as well?
First, the adverb arguably has been used.
Introduced.
Today we will be discussing grammar as we also go along and classifying the idiom that comes up in its various grammatical categories. The adverb arguably has been floated, that we are the second largest community in the country, arguably. I think city means arguably because statistically he must believe we are not the second most populous community in the country. he must believe that we are in fact the most populous community in the country.
That actually is my thinking.
And yet,
that actually is my thinking.
And yet, Barack, still the meta narrative, as you've called it, is that there has been no coalescence around one leader.
Be careful what you wish for, because one of these days it is going to happen. The day when you have the Kikuyu Mount Kenya community coalescing solidly around one leader, and you have the Kalenjin coalescing solidly around one leader, and the Luhya doing the same, and possibly the Luo carrying on with that tradition, and then you find those four communities cohering and coming together under some political understanding, woe betide the rest of the country. Because unity is as good as the purpose for which people unite. If we say that, and I think Achebe has discussed that in the little volume I was privileged to publish some years back, Trouble with Nigeria. Unity is as good as the purpose for which people unite. If we say that we unite so that we go to commit murder somewhere, our unity is a conspiracy city. And a lot of the unity that we talk about in this country is unity of a conspiratorial definition, that people come together, they cohere so that they can then go out and dominate everyone else. Then you have this majoritarian dictatorship that certain political ideologues have described as tyrannies of numbers. Why should you have tyranny in a democracy? The two notions ought to be mutually exclusive. But in Kenya, we seem to be very keen to make them mutually inclusive. That said and done, I think that another way of broadening the context is to look at what is playing out in Western Kenya within the broader purview of national politics. And what is going on. I interpret it as the case for the Uhuru succession, and where President Uhuru Kenyatta himself has declared himself an active, interested party in his own succession, and not precluding the possibility that he could also want to succeed himself. And desiring, therefore, to succeed himself, we see that he's at the center stage of devolution of political parties, the creation of political parties of an ethnic and regionalized nature, each one of them with a command base, a local one, and the ultimate commander-in-chief of these political parties being none other than His Excellency, the President himself. He has recently presided over a process of amending the Elections Act to provide for coalitions that now look like political parties. In the end, you are likely to have a president in power, or rather in authority, but not in power. A president in authority in the sense that he or she has got the instruments of state authority, but does not have power. The political power is going to reside in devolved political formations in Western Kenya, at the coast, in Turkana, in northeastern Kenya, and elsewhere in the country. And the chief sponsor of these arrangements is going to be the person exercising power, and that power can be made to cause authority to behave in a certain way that power wants authority.
But you seem to be of the view
to behave
that when communities get together, what it often portends is something sinister, something untoward, and yet the reason why people get together oftentimes is just very fundamental, because they find it makes, for purposes, if you're talking about a nascent community, at the very basic, it's security. And then they realize the benefits of it. In modern day society, the whole idea of the cooperative movement is nestled in that very, very same idea. Now, however, when you bring in politics, then what you say begins to make a great deal of sense. But the question I want to ask is, people talk about the Luhya nation. Does it really exist? Is there a Luhya nation?
Nations are formed out of historical contexts that as a country, for example, we speak of a Kenyan nation. If we speak of a Kenyan nation, which in its diversity has got people from different historical provenances, that they are even linguistically separate, that culturally they are diverse, and in so many other ways, philosophically, the things they believe in, the things they want to practice, how we are born, how we are brought up, how we die, how we are buried, what we believe post that. If in spite of that, we can still speak of a Kenyan nation, complete with national accoutrements and appurtenances, in that we even have such things as national days. How more possible is it to have a smaller nation in corners like
you could,
like yes, we could. If you were to look at the Luo nation, for example, Professor City, you are talking about a diversity of populations which arrived in their present
geographical locations, yes,
abodes,
yes,
under different national leaders. There was the Owinyi nation, there was the Jokao Jok nation, there was the Jopadola nation, there was the Jokao Molo nation, and the same way you can talk about the Luhya. And the Luhya are defined not just by the cultural traits, but even linguistically. We have a common language with different dialects that enjoy mutual intelligibility. If you look at what social linguists like Gleason have told us, if you look at Guthrie and Greenberg, who are historical linguists,
linguistic experts,
lexicographers, they talk about mutual intelligibility within a language. If the mutual intelligibility is not there, then it's not a language.
Then it's not a language. Can we take a break and we can come back and continue with that point, CT? We'll take a break on KTN Home. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We will continue after this short break where we take a look at weather and traffic, and the conversation continues thereafter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
This nation has never healed genuinely from the 2008 violence. We've never had a healing process. We've swept it under the rug.
Let me tell you, the handshake was the most disastrous political event in the history of country after the coup attempt of 1982.
There is no Kikuyu pothole, Luo lack of water, Okamba, lack of traffic. There is no Luhya lack of drugs in the hospitals. Or Jaluo one. All our issues are the same issues. If you are in a room
and just about everybody in that room has a court case or another. What impression does that give you?
What are you saying? Why haven't you done it in the last 20 years? But they're telling us, like August, some miracle is going to happen. My friend, I want to tell Kenyans you'll be in for a rude shock.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
Unapostoria tuni real news. Mimi sikuamini mpaka nione sasa hizo vis. Unanitext online to meet unanifeel. Staki jokes ama mimi nitakureport for real.
Wazazi watoina mayouth wetu, usidanganywe, erebuka na ujibambe na burudani safe na masomo mtandaoni.
For information, visit cop.ke-cirt.go.ke/ report incidents on ke-cirt.go.ke or call 0703 042 700. The Communications Authority of Kenya.
Cloudy conditions in Nairobi at 20, highs of 24 and lows of 16. The sun will come out though later. It's cloudy at 18 in Nakuru, highs of 27 and lows of 15. 13 will be the low in a cloudy Nyeri at 16, highs of 27 and 18 degrees, and cloudy in Eldoret, highs of 24 and lows of 14. It's cloudy in Mombasa for most parts of this morning at 28, highs of 33 and lows of 26. And we're looking at cloudy conditions in Malindi at 28, highs of 31 and lows of 26. It's cloudy in Kisumu. We'll see highs of 28 and lows of 19, while Kakamega will be cloudy for most parts of the morning. Currently at 22, it'll go to highs of 29 and lows of 15. It's partly sunny at 22 in Kampala. We'll see highs of 27 and lows of 20, while in Dar es Salaam, clouds are out as well at 27, highs of 33 and lows of 27. Johannesburg is sunny at 20, highs of 28 and lows of 14, while in Lagos it's mostly clear at 26. It'll go to highs of 34, back down to lows of 26. And it's raining in Kinshasa at 23, highs of 30 and lows of 23.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
It continues quite hot and heavy on the Thika Superhighway this morning, and thus getting into the city is quite the labour today. We're also looking at Raila Odinga Way, which is taking off a lot of Langata Road, which has been packed for a very long time. Uhuru Highway then getting into the city very slow as well, going out through into Westlands. We are definitely in the middle of traffic hour. It's going to take us out for another hour or so. So the bypass is looking pretty good. Northern Eastern, Red Link and the Eastern Bypass, that will help today. So you want to consider using those. Outer Ring, not looking too bad. Getting around to Thika Road, if you want to use that. Coming off of Mombasa Road, there's an option for you this morning. Let's talk on Spice FM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The conversation continues in the studio this morning. Ndu Okoh and CT Muga, and we're joined by Barak Muluka today. And if you're just coming back after that break, audience on KTN Home, it continues. We're having a conversation about the Luya Nation. CT, something was burning, just burning at the toes.
Actually, I wouldn't call it burning.
Oh, okay.
Simmering.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because you see the benefits of coming together, the benefit of what we like to refer to universally as unity, is something you cannot possibly overstate. It's obvious, it's patent, it's out there. So the question I'm actually asking Dr. Muluka here is, what hinders Luya unity? Because people talk about a sleeping giant. The Luya Nation is not a sleeping giant. This giant is awake and walking and talking, and it's very visible. But this one thing, all the nations he's spoken of, the neighbors, the Luo Nation, with all the diversity,
coalesce?
Politically, they are able to coalesce. They may have their differences here and there, but they're able to. Other nations are able to do that, and that is what makes for.
Indeed, and I think you are quite right. People's behaviors and activities are deeply etched in their philosophies, in their traditional philosophies. But I think that increasingly the Luhya philosophical orientation is also beginning to change. You cannot live among people and be isolated from the way they think, the way they do things. Traditionally, we are not a conspiratorial people. And a lot of the unity that people talk about is unity of a conspiratorial nature.
Also,
City has talked about unity to protect yourselves. I think that was the idiom that you used.
That is what many communities do.
Unity to be safe. The question becomes, to be safe from who? To be safe from what? Are we uniting so that we protect ourselves from elephants, from lions, from leopards?
Starts there.
Yeah?
And then it evolves.
We are uniting so that we protect ourselves from fellow human beings.
Or any existential threat.
Yes, and that external threat defines itself as anyone who does not belong to our community. If you're not an indigene of this community, then our first state of mind is to define you as an enemy. And we have seen that in particularly politically charged times, when you will put through a call to your best buddy from a different tribe. Let's stop playing footsie with these things. Let's call them what they are. You put a call through to your friend from another tribe because you usually watch football with them, you eat nyama ya kuchoma with them. And during those particular moments of political competition, they are unwilling even to pick your call. They are unwilling to go with you to the watering place, to the mouth-watering meat, because they associate you with that community that must be hated. Traditionally, we have called ourselves the people of Murembe. Murembe means peace. And it's a very Luhya thing that as you gravitate across the landscape in Luhya land, they are always greeting everyone they meet. Murembe, Murembe mno, how are you? There's a bit of that contagion in the northern Luo land, where the point of convergence with the Luhya is. In fact, the Luhya people want to shake your hand as an extension of that peace. And they have carried it to the media, where we are known for salam. Nataka kutuma salam. I want to send greetings. And salam is about peace. Peace. In fact, even in Kiswahili, salam, the root
is in Arabic.
Is peace, where it's been borrowed, of course, from Arabic. There's that influence. But the underlying active ingredient is this notion of goodwill towards all. Increasingly, I think, we are starting to see that Murembe, a new Murembe consciousness, where you feel that there's derision. You're being derided by those towards whom you have extended goodwill. Because when you look at even the competitions within the community, they are not indigene, they are not localized. They are competitions. They are proxy competitions.
At this point, can I interject just quick? Because and stop me if I'm wrong, but what I almost hear you saying is that this nation has previously taken on the position of pacifist. And if we know a pacifist usually is the one who will step back from their position in order to avoid conflict. But today, are we seeing then now that the nation is shirking off this garment of pacifism and is saying, no, we want to contend? Is that what's happening here?
It's in its incipient stages, because you can see that the Musalia Mudavadi earthquake is an expression of self-liberation, and yet it's incomplete. It's incomplete in the sense that it has sojourned in another location, not too dissimilar from the one that has been vacated. That when you vacate this space, which is dominated by Raila Odinga, and you discover yourself in this space, which is dominated by William Ruto, it is more like taking a decision whether you should be eaten by a fox or by a jackal. But you have certainly told the fox that you are not going to eat me. Whether you are going to submit yourself to being eaten by the jackal, I don't know. But ultimately, the Luhya people must stop making themselves the objects and subjects of proxy wars, of the kinds of Cold War era that we saw, diverse territories across the world, fighting wars that belonged to other people. You become what Vladimir Lenin has called useful idiots, that you are participating in other people's propaganda, you're participating in other people's warfares. You must know that when you go to a dog market, and I know that City does not like us to talk too much about dogs, it prefers cats. When you go to a dog market where people are buying and selling dogs, you don't behave as if you are at a chicken market where you are going to use the rules and regulations of buying and selling chickens. The Kenyan political market is a dog market. And I think the Luhya people are beginning to wake up to that reality. Will they wake up fully this year? I don't know.
You know, Barack, I hear what you're saying, and academically speaking, it is sound. But when I look at the political goings on in the various parties that exist in Luhya land, as we call it, just the competition for the various positions that are available, it speaks very loudly of a very clear awareness of what you're saying. There is an understanding. Because the fact that even people vote in an MCA, that's people coming together. You vote for a member of parliament. It's the same principle. You just keep graduating it. Now, why I call it a walking, talking, alive, awake giant is because the might of this geographical area we like referring to as Luhya land, if you extend it beyond the boundaries of the so-called Western Kenya, and you move it into even the bigger towns in the country, you'll find that the influence goes beyond the boundaries of the so-called Western Kenya and moves even into the neighboring counties to so-called Western Kenya and into the metropolises that we have or the big towns that we have. Now, this isn't influence, if I'm going demographical, just by sheer numbers, this isn't influence that you ignore. But it's influence that will dissipate if it isn't unified. This is really what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And I'm agreeing entirely. I don't think that could be contradicted. That when you have all these cohering, all these various political formations within the Luhya nation, I know you don't like to look at it as a nation.
I actually think it is a nation.
But it is.
I think it is a nation. And I'm saying it's a fragmented nation.
All nations are fragmented.
But they unify. You'll find a nation unifying in
on one thing.
Yes, on the presidency, for instance. Unifying in a language that they accept we will use, whether it's some foreign one or a localized one.
Or a particular ideology, whether
Yes.
it be economic or
Yes.
social or whatever it is, you'll find that there is some kind of similar tissue running in.
Yes, you have a common parliament, there's commonality, which now takes into account the diversities, but yet they work towards the same goal. And I'm saying the political parties aren't even the issue. Let there be as many as there are people, it is fine. However, if the political parties do not work towards that common goal that benefits this entity we're referring to as a nation.
Part of the problem, and which goes back to the philosophy that I was talking about earlier on, is the fact that some of those who are fronting and posturing as leaders and who purport to speak for the community and style themselves as elders are actually not lawyers as such. If you listen to a name like Aduol, what name is that?
It's reminiscent of my neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it has something to do even with the home, where that home is started in lowland. What is it called? Dual. Yeah. And when it moves up to a place called Gicheru in the heartland of Luyaland, it becomes a twirl. The T becomes a D. And you know that T and D are positional variants.
They're interchangeable.
Interchangeable in some
communities.
They are even what are called allophones. The meaning of the word doesn't change. Whether you use a T
it's the enunciation of it that changes.
or a D. Yeah. So whether it's a dual or a twirly or dual or twirl, it is the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Self-appointed spokesperson par excellence. If you look at Wamalwa, you know, in Luyaland, there's a tradition where we say we just swallow you, even when we know that they came with you.
Yes.
Even when we know that they came with you, we just swallow you. The children will belong
to us.
Yes. One of the stories, the best kept secrets, is that the Wamalwa family that we speak of, including my good friend Eugene Wamalwa, is not Luya. These are the people who are called variously the Elgon Masai, the Sabaot, or the Sevei, or whatever.
Or a Nairobi senator, for example, who's often given that story.
Yes, you look at the senator in Nairobi, he's not Luya. You look at my neighbor, Wycliffe Ambetsa Oparanya. Which other Luya have you seen having a name like Oparanya? The name Oparanya is from the neighborhood.
But your people, especially the Kakamega region, I've never come across a place where people have unique names. You don't hear duplication of names. No, sincerely.
Yes,
someone comes.
Their family,
it's a family name, and that's it.
Their family names.
Yes.
And some names are inherently Luya. I've heard you people this morning having a problem with articulating a simple name, Kwamchetsi Makoha.
Okay. See, now when you say it like that, it would sound like it was extremely simple. But you see, this is the thing.
See,
I'm listening to you say all of these things.
But how do you expect? I'm a non-French speaking individual. Now, you bring in a pronunciation that is really akin to French, and I'm supposed to understand it and speak it with the fluency that you do.
It is called the shibboleth.
So, even as we look at this, and I'm hearing what you're saying, that there are people who've come from different parts of the country, from different areas, from different communities, and then are all now lumped together as Luya. within the Luya, you have so many different ones. So the question is, like, the way you can ask, is an American truly an American?
Do.
Is an American truly an American? So here we are asking people to be one tight-knit where they are so different. Is that a contributory factor?
What Dr. Muluka is telling you, if you go to any of these places that border, it doesn't matter who they border, what he has described is so commonplace, you'll be amazed. When you get to talk to someone, you find people are bilingual in the mother tongue, in the easiest. There are places where people speak 3 different languages.
Absolutely.
The moment they realize you don't speak that language, they immediately switch. And believe me, you will not. The switch is seamless.
So the question is, again, that even if you have people from different geographical locations and are able to switch with something as powerful as language, then again, why the difficulty in being able to come together? Is it then because that their heritage or where they have come from is different? And here we are saying, all of you in this particular area want you to be able to come together when you can't.
Oh, we can. If you go to a Shiringiri,
okay.
Some people say Kiringiri, others say Seringiri, others say Shiringiri. Yeah? And we meet there. The Maragoli are there. It's a point of convergence. The Abitaho are there. The Abashisa are there. And the Abanyode are there.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
And they cohere, they do their trade, they do their business, they do...
Unless you're told you think it's one coherent community.
Disturbs us. These are exogenous kinds of practices and philosophies where we are supposed to embrace injustice, for example. We look at things from the context of, is it just? And we still have our alternative dispute resolution forums. We still sit under trees in the village. Even I now am an elder who is subject to those traditional courts. And the active ingredient is the sense of justice. When we look at the nation, we look at fellow Kenyans through different prisms from what they look at us. And I think that increasingly, even those of us who have flattered ourselves with the thought that we were now postmodern intellectuals and scholars, we need to just go back and tell our people, look, they are laughing at you because of how you are behaving. Indeed, Project Kenya should have gone the way the Luya people behave.
How? Oh, okay. Explain. So even as we're running down out of minutes, so whereby we've been saying there's no unity, you're saying actually this is a perfect model of how the country should be run.
Absolutely. So that we listen to you, we listen to your agenda, we listen to what you purpose for the country, for us, for the entire nation, and we say that we will go with you. But we don't do that. Here is a situation where we have seen, unless our memory does not serve us well, we remember Limuru too, that there is a gathering of the Mount Kenya communities that has assembled without any clear indication of what the message is going to be. And they are telling, at that time, Deputy Prime Minister Uhuru Kenyatta, please form a party and we will vote for you through that party. And he formed a party and they voted for him. We are seeing that there's a meeting coming in Sagana and we don't even know what the agenda is. People have been summoned to Sagana by our president, my chief sovereign. Is going to be addressing a tribal gathering. And when you talk about these things of tribe, is when you are stripped to your basics. You denude yourself of all alien garbs, including the garb of Kenyan nationhood. And you wear the cultural garb of ethnicity, and you tell the ethnic community that this is what is best for us. We were going to Lancaster in 1960, 61, 62 to attempt to forge a Kenyan nation. Lancaster House was the forge in which the Kenyan nation was attempting to build itself, to define itself. But even as we came from Lancaster, some of us were afraid of being dominated by the so-called big tribes. In the proper order of time, we were dissuaded against the different formations. Like my part of the country and community was in Kadu.
Yeah.
And Kadu was essentially a defensive political formation against the Kikuyu and the Luo, whom our progenitors were afraid were going to dominate us. And even as we see attempts to revive that kind of dominance, perhaps it's a time for Luya ideologues to just go back and tell people this is what Mudiro.
But let me ask you something.
We're going to take a break.
Mudiro was talking about.
Let's take a break on this and come back and wrap up this conversation. Have to say goodbye to our audience on KTN Home. Thanks for joining us once again. The conversation continues, however, on SpiceFM and online. And we continue again tomorrow at 3 minutes to 9 o'clock.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
3 minutes to 9 o'clock. We've been having this riveting conversation.
94.4
nationhood when it comes. Your final words.
I'd like to just mention something before he has his final word. Barak, do I hear you to be saying that the Luhya nation has allowed outsiders to dominate them and to lead them?
Absolutely. You know, you accommodate people. And you know, culturally, even when we swallowed you up, even when we said, you're one of us, there were always things that people did not allow. For example, we would not allow into traditional leadership someone whom they came with. You understand?
I understand you perfectly.
Whom they came with.
Do you want to wrap this thing up?
You are not allowed. Somebody who has undergone certain kinds of debilitating operations. In fact, some of those people would be operated on so that the genealogy would end there. Today, we have allowed people of that kind into positions of leadership. People whose genealogies have been terminated to end with them are in positions of leadership. And that must be addressed in Luhya land.
Well, that's a good wrap-up from what you've done. Barak, always a pleasure to have you with us, and it's interesting for these intrigues that we've heard today. Come again. You've spun up something today whereby we've been poking fingers and saying, you know what, you guys should come together, and you're saying, actually, no. The country should look at the model that we've been prescribing.
Given you, and ask Eric Latiff to stop running away each time he hears I'm coming here.
There's something there. There must be something. Barak, thanks again for joining us. The conversations continue coming around to 9 o'clock, and we're going to be having then a conversation about, you know, how can you influence what happens in the coming elections 2022. Conversations continue on Kenya's biggest conversation. It's 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
This is News. I'm Dennis Aseto. President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to lead the much-anticipated second of three meeting tomorrow at the Nyeri State Lodge. Central Kenya leaders allied to the Jubilee Party have welcomed the president's plan to support the Azimio la Umoja movement. The meeting is expected to bring together 30,000 people from across all sectors from Mount Kenya region, including governors, members of parliament, members of the county assemblies, top business people, among others. Ahead of the forum, Jubilee leaders in Central Kenya have rallied their supporters behind the president's agenda, which includes a succession plan that is likely to dominate the meeting. Standard Media Group will be following up on that story and bring you the latest in our bulletins tomorrow, so keep it locked on the Standard Media Group platforms. And Orange Democratic Party leader Raila Odinga has downplayed claims by the Kenya Cons Alliance on the ballooning public debt. In an attack to Deputy President William Ruto, who is also part of the Kenya Cons Alliance, Raila said the DP should take responsibility of the increased debt since he has been in government. According to Raila, every country has a public debt and Kenya is no exception. He said his government has a well-articulated plan to seal corruption loopholes, saying the vice has highly contributed to the increased debt. Raila was speaking in Lungalunga, Kwale County. Today, he is expected to still be in the coastal region for his tours. We will be following up on that as well and bring you the latest in our subsequent bulletins. And while party leader Kalonzo Musyoka has denied claims that they held a meeting with ODM leader Raila Odinga over a possible coalition deal. Speaking in Kwale, Kalonzo, who led the One Kenya Lands Brigade campaigns in the region, said his meeting with Raila was coincidental, which resulted in greetings but nothing beyond that. Now, Deputy President William Ruto will officially be endorsed as the United Democratic Alliance presidential flag bearer on March 15th. The party's Secretary General Veronica Maina announced in a notice that the National Delegates Convention will be held at the Kasarani Indoor Arena will be among other issues to nominate presidential flag bearer. Ruto is the sole presidential contender to declare presidential candidature in UDA party. The Deputy President's endorsement will mark his decamping from the Jubilee Party to the newly formed UDA party in the 2022 general election. Now, the Directorate of Criminal Investigations has given presidential aspirant Jimmy Wanjigi 72 hours to surrender 11 firearms and 485 ammunitions that are in his possession illegally. In a letter, the DCI says Wanjigi doesn't have a firearm license and will be arrested if he fails to heed the directive. This even as the DCI revealed that Wanjigi ignored summons to appear before the Firearms Licensing Board last year, following a directive by CS Interior Fred Matiang'i for a mandatory vetting of civilian firearm holders. DCI also accuses him of congregating highly trained persons in the use of firearms for ulterior motives. Among the firearms Wanjigi is expected to surrender is a Seska, a shotgun, a rifle, foglock pistol, among others. Wanjigi is expected to address the media today with regards to the story. We will be following up on that and bringing you the latest when we get the information. Now, Chief Justice Martha Koome has directed that all pending hate speech cases be concluded within the next 4 months. The CJ, who is also the President of the Supreme Court, asked heads of stations to identify all pending hate speech cases in their respective stations and work out modalities to fast-track their resolution with the trial courts. Speaking in Eldoret, the Chief Justice demanded a progress report from each court station on the implementation of the directive within 3 months. Now, a 16-year-old girl has been hospitalized in Muthui County after a botched abortion attempt on her 5-month-old pregnancy. According to a report by the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, the Standard 8 pupil complained of abdominal pains and was rushed to hospital by her mother. It is during the checkup that the pupil disclosed that she had attempted an abortion over the weekend, further linking her school head teacher to the pregnancy. And 20 Kenya-based startups have been selected to benefit from a British Council program funded by the Foreign Commonwealth Office to support the growth of the local fashion industry. The business will form the second cohort of the Creative DNA program launched in 2020 to develop skills, knowledge and global networks for local fashion designers. The program is focused on promoting alternative and innovative approaches to the global fashion system with the ambition of demonstrating that the fashion sector in Kenya is a professional choice for young people and a valuable contributor to the creative economy. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
.4 Spice FM. Nairobi.
Okay, traffic still continuing in many parts of the city this morning. We're looking at quite some of it still on Mombasa Road today, and it will continue for some time from all indications, especially right around that Imara Diamond turnoff. The southern bypass looking pretty good. However, you can use that to get away from that madness before you make that turn off at the ICD. All right, it also continues on the Thika Superhighway today. Uhuru Highway, quite a thing. Langata Road is pretty messy all the way through to the roundabouts. Raila Odinga Way looking just a little bit better as you get towards Ngong Road at the roundabout of the city mortuary. Coming out of Westlands, where we saw some action before, looking a little bit better, but it's still heavy in many parts. Thika Superhighway then also a bit better, just past Survey now, and Kiambu Road also better. Getting out of traffic hour very soon. So for now, it looks like it's getting easier to traverse the city. Let's still talk on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff.
At a few minutes after 9 o'clock,
7
7 minutes after 9 o'clock specifically, you're tuned into Kenya's biggest conversation. Where you tuned in from? 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.7 in Eldoret, 97.7 in Malindi, 90.9 in Nyeri, and 96.0 in Nakuru. Also online, YouTube, Facebook, the live stream is up. You've been with us since 6 a.m. and we're now into the final hour of Kenya's biggest conversation. Ndu Okoh and C.T. Muga with you this morning. Eric doing Eric things, and we'll see him in a few hours. And we're getting into conversations about securing peaceful elections this year. But before we introduce our guest for this hour, let's look at today's proverb.
An old cat will not learn to dance. It's a Moroccan proverb. You know, Ndu, you are really spot on. Huh? Cats are a very prevalent and notable ingredient in the life of Moroccans. In fact, the street cats, many of the cats that you speak of, are not even domestic cats. They are cats, what we call stray cats. But people take out food. They make sure that the cats actually have food to eat on a daily basis. So, yes, so when you hear a proverb about a cat coming from Morocco, yes, it's the mention of an integral part of that society.
Indeed.
Yes.
So, cats do what? Don't learn not to dance when they're old.
It's the old cat that will not learn to dance.
Old cats.
Taking the view that it already knows how to dance. And if it doesn't, it means it knows how to dance but isn't going to learn a new jig.
Indeed. All right, so here we are. And speaking of folks who've been in the business for some time, Paul Mado Kalemba is in the studio with us this morning. Again, Paul, how are you?
I'm fine. Morning.
Good morning. Karibu sana.
Asante, and I'm happy to be here now, this time not as a cartoonist.
What's the technical term for this thing we loosely refer to as cartoonist?
There are several.
Yes.
First of all, Charles, I'm a journalist.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Oh, yes, yeah. Oh, yes. Cartoonist, illustrator, satirist, humorist, caricaturist.
Yes.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Those are many ists, and I'm glad that you were able to do that, because then, you know, you've been able to tell us now who you are and what you do. You're wearing a different cap today, as we're having this conversation, we're in the throes of election season already. Things are getting hotter and hotter. There are many messages that are flying around. People are saying different things about different subjects. But you're saying something which we know you have said before in a different form. But today and into this season, you're saying something different. Kenya ni yangu, promoting peaceful and secure elections. How are you saying this time?
Okay, let me establish this first. I'm associated to a sound studio. That's Gettable Music in Nairobi. We do music productions. And I've been associated with them for many years. Actually, many people don't know me in that role.
No.
Yeah, I'm a music enthusiast, and indeed I present a music show elsewhere. So we came together and told ourselves that, okay, this is one hell of a hot year. And what can we do, apart from everything else that I do? And we can make a small contribution towards peaceful elections through music. And as everybody knows, music is for all. It's a natural thing. It's appreciated by animals, birds. And there's music for everybody. There's music for love. There's music for
war.
Drumming up war, which is not a very good thing. I've been to places, by the way, where I've been received, not I myself, in a bunch of people, maybe it's probably an event. And if it's a wedding kind of party, then the music is nice and, swell. But I've been received elsewhere. Let me not mention that part of the country. And the reception was, that was a war dance, So, well, there's music for everybody. And specifically for our purposes, music for peace really prevails. Music can be used for everything. So we are using it as a tool for promoting peace, especially this year in this country. And the best way to do it is obviously to come up with a nice melody and a beautiful message within it, to convince our audiences, look, let's do everything right this year as it is.
Why this year?
There
was an election 5 years ago.
Yes.
There was one 5 years before that.
5 years earlier.
Yeah.
And 10 years ago, that is that 5 years earlier, in 2012 to 2013, there's a musician called Samba Mapangala. He's Congolese. He was based in Nairobi for many years. He came up with he wrote a song called Chagua Chagua. It's available on YouTube. And he asked me to animate it, which I did. So I've been involved in these processes for quite some time. It's a beautiful song, though a little with a up-tempo kind of dance beat. But so sometimes it does.
Up-tempo now.
Yeah.
Up-tempo is what exactly?
You see, okay, we've talked about music for love, music for, drumming up war and so on. There's also music for dance. And it will always be up-tempo. Oh, yes, yeah. Okay, there's slower beats for, the blues, people call them. But there are songs specifically designed for dance. If you guys may remember the 70s and 80s disco songs, there are songs specifically designed for shaking
for you to jump around vigorously.
Yes, exactly. So
it's interesting because the songs that you remember that had that kind of beat, you also remember the words. So
yes.
I'm thinking, so with the remembrance of the words, then there's a likelihood that you would remember the message.
Yes, exactly so.
Okay.
And actually, the so-called disco songs had very simple lines, baby, let's go out tonight. Everything's going to be all right. With that kind of rhyme in it. Right. So they are very simple lines, and everybody will remember them. Yes. Everybody will sing along with them. That is actually was the what they intended for. But now a peace song, a song designed for peace, will have a deeper message. Yeah. We still intend to make you remember it. That's why there'll always be a chorus, and the chorus has to be simple enough. For example, this song that we've put out there has got a very simple chorus. Kenya ni yangu, tuko pamoja, But there are rappers involved, and probably so many people might not remember the rap expanse of rappers. But still, when you come back to the rallying chorus, one shall remember. Yes, you go away with it.
I'm still, harping on that. Why was it important? Why is it important then for you to use music to then spread this message of peace in Kenya at this time?
At this time. Music does transcend boundaries, tribal or otherwise, even political. The music of someone like D.K. Mwai from Gatanga in Central Province, he cut out a disc. Those many years ago. Let me not mention those years because I'll be revealing my age. It was called "I Love You," and it was top. It was a top hit in Nyanza at that time. In the jukeboxes of that time, we didn't have what we have today.
Top of the pops.
Yes, exactly.
That's
And
what they're
yet, oh yeah,
Wow.
And yet, the two communities of Central Kenya and Nyanza had some kind of acrimony between them as regards politics.
Yeah.
But that was accepted. Fast forward to many years later on, the songstress Susanna Weo came up with this song Kisumu 100, and it was grasped all over Central Kenya. So this can only mean that music will transcend boundaries, and so on. So it's the best tool of communication when it comes to when one wants to spread the message of peace. Yes.
Okay. So now you've come together with, obviously, the people that you've come together with to produce this song are not politicians. Who are they? And why is it important that those who have produced this song then are the torchbearers of this message?
Yes.
And who,
Right.
and who is the message for?
Obviously Kenyans. And it cuts quite across from the politicians to the voters themselves and anybody in between, even those who consider themselves apolitical. I'm going to stay home and do nothing,
Right.
Because at the end of the day, they do contribute something to that electioneering process. We sat down and told ourselves, why not? Why not? I'm very sure that a couple of other people will come up with their own compositions on the same. But we said, okay, why don't we do this? And we sought some support. And this support we got from the German embassy, the cultural section. So we came together, sat down, said, okay, fine, okay, why don't we put out this song? We cannot really pinpoint one composer such because we've got 4 rappers on it. And a beautiful chorus put together by the likes of the Ketable chief, Tabu Susa, and the singer Winyo.
Is this what I hear people referring to as a collabo?
Well, you might want to call it that, but it strictly isn't really that.
What is a collabo?
No, a collabo is when there are necessarily actually two kind of relatively successful artists. Yeah, with their own audiences. With their own following. Right. Then they decide, okay, let's just get together.
So now, so is this in the league of We Are the World?
I may say so.
So what is the one word you'd use to describe We Are the World? Because it's clearly, is that also a collabo? Because the people who sang in the We Are the World, man, those are some really big names.
Those are about 30 people also. No, that's uniting for a cause.
Isn't this the same thing?
Yes.
You uniting for a cause?
Exactly so. I'm not running away from that. We have united for a cause.
Yeah.
So the 4 artists that we are using, if we had the resources, we'll have used 25. Also, like We Are the World. But in this case, we've got 4. So that's they've come together. They've united to promote this message as it is. You cannot really have a collabo with a crowd of musicians on stage. And the course here, obviously, is very clear. It's of concern to us. Musicians are people who get messages out. Very, very serious messages.
They do.
Yes, it is. And sorry to say, if they turn wild, they can actually do the opposite of what we are doing right now.
That is also true.
And mess up things. It has happened here. It has happened in many other countries where somebody will come out with... So obviously, they won't say that, go to war, let's fight, or something like that. But they may have messages, underlying messages, tacit messages.
Like Bob Marley.
No, for Bob Marley, everything, all his content was positive. Really.
Well, I mean, there've been
even
books.
the change messages were positive.
Sure.
Yeah, you see, one may choose to interpret a song in their own way, and if a musician is calling you out to the streets, you may go out to the streets and picket, very, very peacefully and so on. But you may also choose to come out with stones.
This is true. I hear what you're saying, Mado,
Yes.
and I'm thinking of wars that have been fought. I mean, just hear me out here as I try to open this up a bit. Wars that have been fought. And we heard about the drums of war.
Yeah.
Books have been written about such a thing. Experiences have been retold. And I remember stories that my mother would tell me about the Biafran War and how they had to cross over from one part of the country to the next when they were in school to run away from the war. But the thing was that there were certain sounds that they would hear, and it was a rallying call to people to come out and fight.
Yes.
It was music.
Yes.
It was not supposed to be something pleasant, but it was a rallying call around a particular idea. Can you translate the same thing when we talk about music then for peace? That once you hear it, it is a rallying call for you to remember the things that had happened before that were unpleasant, and then now try to push for peace, regardless of what the situation is. That the drums of war can also be now this melody of peace.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. In fact, let's start with the drums of war. Why do we call it the drums of war? Because drums have been used to pass messages over centuries, and the intensity of hitting them may illustrate that message. So you can imagine a slower pace in a drum beat, which might be a lot more relaxing than vigorous playing of the same. So in fact, let me just quickly say that messages can also be transmitted through instrumental music, even without lyrics, where, for example, there's music, music created by people like Chopin and all the other guys from Vienna and around.
Handel and
yeah.
so on.
Oh yes, yeah. Mozart and so on. Today you see it on YouTube labeled music for thinking, music for working, music for relaxing and so on. Meditation and so on. This is because there's that message within that music without these people actually doing any lyrics. It's just the harps, the violins, the cellos, and everything else that they use at the time. So that alone shall set the pace of what the composer once taken out there. Now, music has been used, for example, in the military this is long before radio devices and so on. Music was used on the large battlefield to signal either let's surge forth or let's retreat. And it was used by a beagle. This thing that looks like a
trumpet.
This small thingamajig that looks like.
And indeed, that was translated into today's military kind of practices. Pam param parararara, that kind of thing.
They even had drummers, remember?
Yes, exactly so. Those many centuries ago, because they didn't have megaphones, they didn't have radio communication, that was used to communicate across vast expanses of land. Yeah, so you had that beagle call, and you knew that the division chief, or whatever you call them, is instructing us to do this or that. Similarly, in music today, I can actually compose a nice, relaxing and soothing kind of sound, and one will know that my mind is at peace, and I want yours to be at peace as well. Yeah, without lyrics. But if you fit in lyrics, then you're now intensifying the message as it is. Yeah.
Kenya ni yangu.
Yes.
I mean, it's obviously the message. It's our country. Have to do everything that we can to. Why is that the message that was picked? Why specifically that? Why not, protect our borders? Why not, something else? Why that?
Right now the threat is from within, so it's not from without. So this is where we are focusing. Kenya ni yangu, from that title, that Kenya is mine, we are trying to reinforce, instill that thinking into the Kenyan to have this sense of ownership. Right. Yeah, ownership of the country, to be part of it. It's mine. If it gets messed up, I lose. I and my family, my community, and everybody else. So it's actually designed to emphasize that it is mine, I, you, and somebody else, all of us. And if we take care of it, then and nothing goes wrong, then we are okay. We slip into August 10th, 11th, 12th without a scratch, then we are absolutely doing fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
There are many who are going to ask the question, though,
yes.
Mado, that in 2007, I believed firmly that Kenya was mine. And then all these things happened, and people are still recovering from the wounds of that madness until today. And I'm thinking, I'm in a helpless place. What am I going to do? Yes, I believe Kenya is mine. I'm patriotic. I have nationalist values, etc., but can I really do anything? So what, in as much as that is the message, what is the call? What are Kenyans actually supposed to do to protect the country if the threats from within? What are Kenyans supposed to do? I go vote, I go home.
I've done my bit.
Yeah.
I have voted.
That's it,
And I am I pay my taxes, even if I am.
I've done my
I've
bit.
done my part. What more should I do to ensure this situation of peace and security during an election period when I really am not in the throes of the drama?
Yes. There's always the trickiness of a nation. Yeah, and I happen to listen to you guys when you're speaking to my good friend Barack. A nation to me is a region with defined boundaries, and within it there can be several types of people, communities, and so on. A country like Kenya happens to have diverse cultures, diverse tribes within it. That's always a very tricky kind of scenario when it comes to running a nation and rallying these people together. To us, obviously, music can do the trick. As I've said earlier, that since it transcends borders, it can be used. Back in 2007, obviously, with our naughtiness and our bad behavior, we might not remember right now, but there were songs running down to the elections that called for, crazy things. Oh, yes. They might not have been doing it openly. But, musicians can be tricky, just like poets and so on. That messages can be subtle, can be hidden.
It's called dog whistle communication.
Yes, exactly.
If it's for a community, the community listening to it will know exactly what is being said.
Yes.
Just like that whistle that nobody else will hear, but the dog will hear
yes.
it. It knows what it ought to do, right?
Oh, yes, exactly so. So, in fact, most of such songs are designed to my people, So I'll sing in my language, and I'll use those messages, those hidden messages that we have. So another community listening to this song may not really know that these guys are calling for some kind of war or something, or rejection of election results and so on. And that happened in 2007. Obviously, we shall not mention those titles, excuse me, because that will be bringing those guys back, as it is. Thereafter, rather, when our misbehavior was going on, almost all radio stations and TV stations dashed to their libraries and retrieved that song by Eric Wainaina.
Yeah.
What's the title again?
Daima.
Yeah, Daima, Kenya Daima. And that song played for several days.
It did.
Yes. Why were we doing so? Why was it just a common song before the elections? We were hardly noticing it. Yes, it was a hit, but it was, Eric has got a very good song, Daima, Kenya Daima. And we didn't think much of it thereafter until those clashes broke out. And I tend to believe that song helped a lot. Even people who are kind of fighting against his community, that song got to them. It got to their heart. It got into their minds, and probably they changed their thinking a little as it is. Yeah.
I mean, I think the layers of this are so deep, and many things that we can do in terms of how this message can be passed through music. We're talking with Paul Khalemba Mado in the studio today, and looking at Kenya ni yangu and how can we ensure free, peaceful elections in the country, and what can we do? The conversation continues. It's 9:30. We're going to take a look at weather and traffic and come back, and the conversation continues.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
21 degrees, mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi, highs of 24 and lows of 16. It's cloudy at 20 in Nakuru. We'll see highs of 27 and lows of 15. 13 will be the low in a cloudy Nyeri, highs of 27. And we're looking at mostly cloudy conditions at 18 in Eldoret, highs of 24 and lows of 14. Cloudy in Mombasa at 30, highs of 33 and lows of 26. While in Malindi, it's now raining in some parts at 30, highs of 31 and lows of 26. Cloudy conditions at 24 in Kisumu, highs of 28 and lows of 19. While we're looking at cloudy conditions at 25 in Kakamega, we'll see highs of 29 and lows of 15. Kampala, partly sunny at 25, highs of 27, and we'll see highs of 33 in Dar es Salaam, where it's cloudy, currently at 28. Cloudy now in Lagos at 26, highs of 34 and lows of 26, while it's sunny at 21 in Johannesburg. We'll see highs of 28 and lows of 14. Mostly sunny at 23 in Kinshasa, highs of 30. And in Beijing at 3 degrees, it's sunny, highs of 4 and lows of -8, while 6 degrees and cloudy in Paris, highs of 13 and lows of 4. 4 degrees and cloudy in London. We'll see highs of 14 and lows of 7 through the day. And finally, in New York, 5 degrees clear. Coming into Tuesday, we'll see highs of 12 and lows of 5.
Spice up your life.
The Time says we're getting out of traffic hour, but the situation on the streets is telling a totally different story, especially with what's happening on Langata Road today and on Gong Road. A little bit of traffic coming on to Raila Odinga Way, but that's nothing to worry about. Where the drama still continues is on the Thika Superhighway, quite some coming towards the Pangani underpass, and it's still pretty heavy. We're still looking at a bumper-to-bumper situation all the way from just past the Utali Drift out then towards the underpass. And then coming into the CBD, there's a usual mishmash of traffic, likely to continue for most parts of today, but not to be too crazy. So traffic hour maybe a few minutes out past this time, but it's manageable, I think. Let's keep an eye on things, guys, through the day, just in case anything does jump out at you. Let us know. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
Well, you're tuned in from around the country and online. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Ndu Okoh, CT Muga with you. Eric off today, but the conversations continue. We've been in the studio with Paul Khalemba Mado today, and we're talking about a different kind of message that you're spreading with the production of this new song and the music and why it's important to do it in this manner. Mado, what can people latch on to? Usually when there's something that you've lost, which a lot of people did with the violence that we saw in 2007, 2008, and then with the further uncertainty in maybe the next year with the whole overturning of the election results and all of this, and then going to the Supreme Court, and then there's uncertainty. What in this year, with this message, can people latch on to and run with and say, look, you know what, it can be different, and we can now go with that and move forward?
Yes, to me, that will be hope. Yeah, hope is very important, all the way from the individual to all of us collectively as a nation. Hope is crucial. It's key to a nation's prosperity and good future. And if that feeling, if that sense is widespread throughout the population, then in my view, things will turn out to be better. You know, even if there's disappointment after the elections, and we are likely going to have that. There are winners and losers. So if the losing side had this kind of hope that, okay, maybe in 5 years' time, we'll re-emerge and be victorious. But we really don't think that way as this nation. We are like, I have to win right now, or not, or never, you know, that kind of thing. Win. Yes, and that's very dangerous kind of thinking. It's a bomb. But if we instill patience within our national thinking, and also grasp and latch onto that thing called hope, then we're all right as a nation. In fact, now that means running away from being selfish, so that each individual broadens their thinking. That I'm not going to be annoyed and call on my neighbor, my friends, my family, and so on. That let's create a mess because we don't like the outcome of certain aspects of the poll. But if we have that patience, then things should be different. As I'm saying, there's only one way, or a couple of ways that can be instilled within us. That is obviously the leaders themselves repeatedly calling on the population that guys, let's think this way. In fact, way in advance, a politician should actually be ready to concede and say so publicly, but we hardly do so. We are just like, if I lose, you know what happened, right. You know, that kind of thing, and that's and we are already hearing lines like that, which obviously are not the best in this kind of volatile situation. The other ways are obviously, as we are saying, through messages of peace, whether in writing, visuals, or music. Yeah.
Paul, which specific audience would you say you are targeting with this song?
Hopefully, we want as wide as possible an audience as it is. But we know, obviously, that this country, we in the music business, in this country, is very, very difficult, and indeed elsewhere today, to purport to capture almost everybody. There are songs that, yes.
Let me ask, you see where I'm going with this?
Yes.
The collabo has 4 of these artists, okay?
Yes.
Now, the people who resonate, there are people who resonate nationally.
Yes.
But a lot of our music resonates in vernacular.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm still at the we are the world thing.
Yes.
Okay? Funding permitting and vision permitting. What stops you from trying to, I'm going to stick with this word collabo even if it doesn't fit in here.
Okay, for our purposes, let's go.
It rolls easy on my tongue.
Sure.
There are people whose music resonates in other communities, and we are communities that form Kenya. What stops you from thinking of a get-together collabo which brings people who you know resonate in their communities to sing this very same song? Because people will hear it. What stops you from them singing this very same thing in their language that their people can hear? What stops them? But it is one song. I keep thinking of We Are the World and the various artists who came together.
Only that it was entirely in English.
It was in English, but you see, the person I remember the most is Rod Stewart.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes, because I liked his music. I like his raspy voice.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, all I'm saying is, I've seen something that works and attracts the large diversity of humanity. Now, this large diversity of Kenyan humanity,
how do you capture it?
is how do you capture it? And capture it in a way that you know we've got them.
The city, you're right. As we were saying, it's tricky to capture a very large audience through music. Though music, again, the way we consume a lot of Congolese music here without even understanding what they're talking about.
We don't even care what it means.
Exactly. So language might not be that important in this case of just listening or dancing to music.
It's been said music is the universal language, right?
Yes, that's right. In fact, with songs like those ones, I always say that that voice you're listening to also now takes up the role of one of the instruments. Because you can't understand what the guy is singing about, then it becomes one of them. But now, City, yes, I agree with you. That's a lovely idea, and we've still got a couple of months. Probably us as Ketable Studio may come up with that kind of whatever if we get the resources in time. Obviously, now our collabo artists. Yeah,
you're going to have to go with that one.
No,
because this man is not going to. It's collabo.
No, I've tried to change it to collective effort. Okay, it doesn't sound sexy, collective effort. Collabo does, yeah. But still, okay, a collective effort of, let's say, even up to 15 artists, for example, singing various languages, including the principal ones. Yes, this would be it would be grand.
Beautiful.
The next thing, obviously, is the languages they're singing in, the message that they're singing in. Then now, how do you do the instrumentation? Because, like in our song right now, we have 4 rappers, as I said. There's some people who might not really be huge fans of rap, especially probably maybe older folks. But I shouldn't really say older folks. I was listening to rap back in 1979, Rapper's Delight, and
wow.
Yeah, so I'm still okay with rap at my age today. So that's not really the problem, and everybody's doing it anyway. And if you notice, rap today, there are normally sections within that song that will be sung out. If I'll say as usual, naturally, before the rap artist comes in, that kind of thing. So there's a nice, lovely kind of whatever.
Before your hook.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Now, this kind of collective effort will actually make it. And it's been done before. There's Musaimo, a musician from central Kenya, who came up with a song such as the one that you're suggesting, not really for peace, but I think it was love. And he had all the languages there. Watching him live with that, I think they were called Mbiri Stars. Watching them live was absolute fun. The Maasai there, the Luo, the Mugiriama there. It was beautifully done. So this is possible, and obviously it will go even further. But that is not to say that our track ain't going nowhere.
No, it isn't. In fact, do you want to go for a break?
No.
Oh, good. You see, consider, okay, how you can actually put this out.
Yes.
You see, yes, radio, very good. But where else do people congregate in large numbers where such a song would have an impact?
Besides airplay and whatever.
Forget that.
Yes,
one, yes.
yeah.
Where you have a captive audience.
Yeah.
Because the song doesn't last an hour. It lasts a few minutes.
The largest audiences in this country are either religious or political. Followed by music. Actually, music comes number 3.
Yes.
Oh, yes. It does.
Yes, it does.
Sorry to say. Religious congregations have always had these kind of loyal audiences over the years, those congregants. Politicians challenge that. I'm talking about numbers.
They challenge it very seriously.
Yes, I'm talking about numbers.
In this country, politics is actually a religion.
Yes, in fact, for religious institutions, it takes 6 days to call out for those people. Come for this happening.
For this thing happening next week, Saturday.
or on Sunday.
Right.
Yeah. But politicians just text
at 1 o'clock.
Just breaking their SUV.
Yeah.
Some roadside somewhere. Then all of a sudden they've got quite an audience. Actually, religious leaders.
See, Paul,
yeah.
you've got it.
Yeah.
Now think about it.
Yes, I'm coming to that.
Good.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. So obviously, we're on that road because we tend to go back and think about how the duo of Unbogable did at that time. Yeah, their song, as much as it wasn't really calling for peace or supporting any political party, the beat and just its
rhetoric.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, was snapped up by some political side and used intensively, and
it worked.
Yes, it worked. Even if it did 3%, 3% is quite a large reckoning when it comes to vote gathering. So we would want to avail the song because this is not commercial, of course not. Yeah, especially from the support that we got. The song is already available online. Kenya ni yangu. We would want to distribute it to political parties. Yeah, and tell them, look, do find time. The song is 6 minutes long, but do find time to. Within 2 or 3 minutes, this song actually has its message out. Yeah, it's not something that you have to listen to like Franco for 15 minutes.
Right. And the chorus is singable.
Yes, it's chantable. The crowd can, but it's a nice melody. It's lovely. It attracts you. It wants you to join it.
I'm gonna want you to sing that at some point.
Yes, Kenya ni yangu. Very nice, by the way.
Also, you tell me. Yeah. Think of political rallies.
Yes.
When people keeps creating these chants, and instead you preface it with a chant of that song.
Of the song.
It's something that will go across political parties.
Powerful in terms of what could happen.
Yes.
Though the other trouble in this country is that if it's snapped up by one political side,
it's going to be used against
then that's
the
it.
other.
Yeah, but they're not going to patent it, are they?
No. I'm saying that it will now kind of exclusively be used by that side. Well, the other side may want to shun it as now that song and that melody.
Is that not their loss?
That's the thing, and hopefully so. Excuse me. In fact, if Kenyans were to widely embrace this song, and it has been snapped up by one wing of the two major forces in politics today, then yes, it will be quite some triumph for the guys who take it up.
You see, the beauty of the situation we have right now is all this coalition building and this plethora of small parties. Don't leave them out of this equation. These big parties tend to have big heads as well. So you want people who see, understand. They also have their crowds.
That's a good point. 13 minutes to 10 o'clock. Let's take a quick break and come back and continue with this conversation. We're looking at, music as an avenue through which messages on peace can be shared in the run-up to this year's election. In the studio with Mado this morning. Take a break and come back and continue.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Mornings done right.
It's 11 minutes to 10 o'clock. The conversation continues. And as you're saying these things, Mado, I'm thinking about a farmer and they're ready to plant their crop, right? They don't just go anywhere. They're using either one, it's fertile land, or at least the land has been tilled, it's been prepared, it's been adequately watered. So obviously the land upon which now you're going to go and spread this music, do you think it is adequately prepared to receive this particular message? Are we at the point where Kenyans say, actually, you know what, it is peace that we ought to pursue right now? Is this land ready to hear this message and run with it? From what you see and what you've been able to experience over the last 10 years, is it a time where Kenyans are saying, you know what, Guys, it's got to be peace.
Yes, obviously, when one has their sights out to do something, you may target 100%, but you tell yourself 70% is good enough. So we want to go out there. We want to also target regions, various groups or whatever it is, in the ways that we can, with the support of our partners, to spread the message as far as possible. We cannot just sit back and put it on YouTube and say, okay, we've done our part. Obviously not. We're going to try as much as possible to see that it reaches audiences out there. I've mentioned before that this country and its reception of music may not be as easy as, let's say, pop star in the UK, who might go out into the villages in Scotland and so on, far away from London. Here, you may have to think about that guy in Pokot and how receptive that person may be to our song and its message, and how this person is going to receive that particular song. And is it really their kind of song? Is this something that they're going to sit down and enjoy? So the much that we can do, yes, we shall do. If it is to, obviously we cannot afford road shows, and that's why we are hoping that probably the song can get onto the bandwagon of these coalitions as they take shape. But we, on our own part at Credible Music and our partners, we shall do as much as possible to make sure that the seeds of this song are sown within the right farms, and as many as possible.
What undoubtedly is true, Paul, is the impact that music can have. But what is equally important is how you plan to ensure that it achieves the purpose for which it is intended. Because, when you're talking of music, my mind has actually been traveling to songs that I've heard since I was a child, and some which I still remember to date.
Yes.
Okay? But the thing that strikes me the most, nursery rhymes that I learned. They have stuck. All these years later, I still remember them. And part of the reason was, I hadn't heard very many nursery rhymes. So some of the first things I actually ever internalized. But there was a rhyme. That's why they were called nursery. There were rhymes to it. And then the song that I later heard, it wasn't... The key ingredient in all these things was the repetition of them.
Sure.
I heard them often over a long period of time, so they were more or less etched.
Yes.
So my question is, when you make these plans, this plan to ensure that you saturate the output of this song so that it's something that, like these ads that you hear, it's on every few minutes on your radio. Before you know it, you will actually be singing it along with them.
Right.
And it's actually a little louder than the regular broadcast.
Yes.
Yeah, it's designed to do so. Yes. Actually, just quickly about those nursery rhymes, those are your formative years.
Yes.
So your brain was largely empty.
Blank canvas.
So it needed to be filled. As one grows older, you're grappling with so much information coming into you that you're absorbing. So we tend to filter out whatever what is not we perceive as not relevant to us. So it's very important to come up with a very good melody in order for it to be ingrained in somebody's mind. And the repeated playtime, of course. Now, the advantage of those many years ago was fewer media outlets.
There are a few things competing for attention.
Where, for example, there are people who are not great fans of the ruling party, KANU, at the time. But there was only one or two radio channels, and they were playing Nyayo. So whether you liked it or not, you were
going to hear it.
Yes, you started actually miming the song as this song, before you stopped yourself and said, damn.
What am I doing?
Oh, yes, yeah. So today it's more of an uphill task because of, again, Africa is losing a large young audience to mediums that present just a couple of minutes or several seconds of whatever it is, and they move on. Their attention span is very limited and so on. And this is what we try to break. once you have a very good composition, well thought out, well arranged and put out there, actually people do get onto it. You may not actually notice that so many songs that are produced weekly that we don't hear about because they don't make the cut. They don't get there. Nobody wants them.
Yeah.
Within 3 or 4 or 5 days, the singer and his or her producer know that we didn't make it, and they move on to do something else because it's very easy to produce music today.
Sure.
It's rather easier than in the past.
Where can we find this, Paul? Even going forward, where will we be able to listen to this, hear it? How can Kenyans then get a hold of this?
We are working out on, it was just launched 10 days ago, or 10 or so days ago. So we are working out on the channels. As we are saying, we want to get it out to cover as great audiences as we can. But right now it's available on YouTube and it's shareable. As I said, it's all commercial, so there's nothing attached to it.
Yeah.
So what we are grappling with right now is just to make the general population be aware that this song exists.
Yes.
And right now it's available online. But beyond that, we want to take it out ourselves physically so that it's felt, but we're trying to chart that out.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Mado, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining us, and obviously great things that are happening here.
I should mention who's behind this.
Please do.
Yes, they'll kill me. There's a lady rapper, MC Sharon. Sharon, she's well known in the circles.
Yeah.
We have, I mentioned Winyo. There's also Fundi Frank, who's one of the premier rap artists in this country. A very good dude. And Mandela was formerly with the Sarabi. He's now based in Dar es Salaam. And behind that, there's quite a large technical crew that we can't really go into. But those are the principal frontline artists.
And of course, yourself. Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to hearing it. And hopefully the message definitely will permeate across Kenya. We're coming to 3 minutes to 10 o'clock this morning on Kenya's biggest conversation, and we've been talking about this music, hopefully that will continue to spread the message of peace. And let's take a message about making the internet safe for children. Quickly, how you can protect your child from cyberbullies. Teach your child online responsible behavior, including the proper ways to interact with people and the use of kind language online, whether addressing a friend or a stranger. Keep the mean or threatening pictures, messages, or texts as evidence while escalating the matter to school or to the bully's parents so that the matter can be addressed. Posting or sending messages that threaten people or put people down. This is what cyberbullying includes. Leaving people out of online games, spreading nasty rumors, setting up unkind or unpleasant fake social media accounts, impersonating someone and sending messages, trolling or stalking, sharing or forwarding people's personal information, posting or insulting or embarrassing photos or videos of people online. This is what all includes, or what all chalks up to cyberbullying. And we're trying to make the internet a safe place. Play cyber soldiers on the Communications Authority's website, on your phone or tablet, and find out how kids can be kept safe on the internet. As we wrap up today's show, CT, remind us today's proverb.
An old cat will not learn to dance. And tomorrow we move away from Morocco and go to another North African country.
Good point to end on today. Thank you for being part of the Situation Room this and every day. We'll be back again with you tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, bright and early, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. We don't take it for granted your contribution to the show every day. We're going to leave you in the hands of good music from 10 o'clock until 11. And then at 11, Yolanda and DJ Spice come in with Sugar and Spice until 2. And then Quatch takes you home on the Spice Drive till 7 o'clock. And that's from 3 o'clock. And then the adults in the room, Barbara and Karigo, will take you into the night at 7 until 10 o'clock. And then some hours will pass and we'll be back again with you in the Situation Room from 6 a.m. on Kenya's biggest conversation. Wherever you're listening to across the country and indeed around the world, 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.7 in Eldoret, 97.7 in Malindi, 90.9 in Nyeri, 96.0 in Nakuru. We're online, YouTube, Facebook, and on your social media handles as well as Twitter. It's great to engage with you on a daily basis, and we keep watching and having the conversations that are important. Coming to the top of the hour, hearing the news. We'll talk again tomorrow. For now, it is 10 o'clock.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
This is Newswire Dennis.